boys and girls. Jonah, give us a dope intro, bro. Say something really important to make people intrigued about what's to come.
Gianmarco started that really well. I'm really proud of him. I really feel like we started on the 3-second line, we'll one day get to the 1, but hey, good stuff. You know what I mean? No, we're doing good. We have an amazing guest, Rosie Noel, amazing human being. I love watching you speak, Rosie, and it was really fun hanging out at Multify with you and like hearing your perspectives on the personalities and like your business coaching and all of that type of stuff. And guys, we're doing something really interesting today, right? Usually Rosie like breaks down personalities in order to like understand how to do business better and all of that type of stuff, right? But tonight we're going to do something special where we're going to more analyze me and Keanu's personalities and figure out, hopefully, if I got it right, Rosie, figure out like possibly how our personalities inform our beliefs politically, our beliefs about the universe, the way that we figure out what's true, all of this type of stuff, because we constantly have conversations about this. And yeah, no, I'm just really excited because everyone's favorite topic is them, and it's just all about us today, right? It's just me and you, Keanu, are the podcast topic. So, I'm excited.
Are Jonah and Daniel dope or not? Rosie will tell us.
Really
At the end of the day, we're going to know if we're dope or not. We may or may not be dope. It's unclear. Rosie, you're going to tell us how this works. What's really interesting, and I think we may have discussed this in the past at some point, I teach sales and communication, probably more heavily focused on communication, which is the foundation of sales in the first place. And the foundation of everything I teach starts with learn how to understand yourself, then learn how to understand other people, then use intentional, effective communication to bridge that gap. And so that's where everything I do is founded on. Everything I do is about reading people and understanding people. So I am obsessed with this topic and really, really excited to hear. I have heard countless fantastic results from people just taking your tests and hearing your feedback with them. So I encourage anybody who watches this tonight, if you have not taken one of these tests, you should definitely take one. And yeah, Rosie, I really appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. It's going to be fun.
Thank you. I'm super excited. And yes, I am excited. Any opportunity to break down people's strengths in whatever context, like I'll take it. If you want to say, why do my strengths mean that I love bubble baths at 8 p.m.? Like I might be able to give you an answer. So yes, this will be a lot of fun.
Very cool. Jonah does love bubble baths.
Yeah, we'll have to go into that.
I knew it was one of you.
Yeah, one of us has to be a bubble bath person.
You do bubble baths in the morning, right? Like you're weird. You like to start your day
what I do is I get out of bed, I put on my bathrobe, 1 hour of soaking in the bubble bath every morning. It's just ritually.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Rosie, Jonah makes his own bubbles.
Is that a fact? Is that real?
Yeah.
No,
they're air bubbles, but
I don't know what we're talking about. What do you mean by make your own bubbles? Like I'm literally blowing the bubbles out of like one of those things? What does that even mean?
Soap. Like some people make their own soap,
So yeah,
some people make their own tallow. Keanu, bring out the tallow. You don't have the tallow with you?
I do. It's over there. So yeah, Yvonne's crazy, like gifted at. Ooh, somebody made this thing, so I'm gonna make it. So she used to make like the cakes that look like.
Yvonne is Daniel's partner.
Yeah, and so she just got into. She's making soap and tallow and face cream and body butters and all these different things. And so, yeah, it's actually really interesting. I smell super scrumptious, which is a good thing. And it's all like organic. It's made from like beef tallow and natural oils and all this stuff. So it's very cool.
Cool. So you are the soap maker, not Jonah. Yeah,
he's definitely much more of the soap maker. I am for sure much more go to Whole Foods and buy the organic soap tallow or whatever.
Keanu makes it on bubble maker. You're the bubble taker, Jonah, is what I think we're establishing here.
I like that. That's a bar. All right. All right, Rosie.
Can you do this entire personality breakdown in rhyme?
That would be good. Like, let's just make a track out of this whole breakdown.
Yeah,
Okay, so I just did my test. You got your results, and then I think I'm assuming you have Jonah's from whenever you guys did it for Venus Multify thing. Okay, I'll toss this to you. You can start with whomever you'd like to start with. We're determining whether or not we're dope. To be clear, Naomi already believes we're dope.
Very cute.
And and then we're gonna find out if Jonah and his overwhelmingly just strong belief that the government will never lie to him and wants what's best for him at all times has anything to do with the fact that I'm apparently being dubbed the flat earther. This is the thing. I'm just going to take the moniker. I'm gonna own it, I guess. So yeah, we're gonna see if this tells us something. Rosie, the ball is in your court here.
Ready, let's go for it.
Yes, there are 34 themes, but after hearing that you were a flat earther, I asked them to add a 35th theme to the assessment on conspiracy theory beliefs, and you scored number 1 for that. So I'm super excited.
Number 1 out of 35.
You won.
Did you expect anything else? I'm
you
not
won
sure.
the assessment.
1 out of 35, dude. You're not God.
Okay. So do you want me to share my screen? Is that, or do you want me to just speak to
I
it?
would. I don't think neither of us care about that, or I don't care if you should put my personality. So do you know how to do that, Rosie? If you go to the bottom where it says present.
I think I got it. Yes.
Then just share screen.
Yeah. Let me make sure I get the right window up. Okay, cool. Well, Daniel, you're the tab I have open, so we're gonna go with you first.
I like it.
Okay. So let me give you, Jonah, I know you know a little bit about this. Daniel, I know you're newer to the concept of Clifton Strengths. So let me just tell you a little bit about the assessment before I, who has a better personality? Before, well, if Vina would have joined us on this call, her number 1 strength is competition, but you guys are both also high competition, but she would have, actually, no, wait. No, yes, you both are high competition. Jonah, you are number 11, and Daniel, you're number 7. But Vina's number 1, and she would find a way to beat you both. So, but I love that you are already looking that this is like that statement alone, or that question alone of who has a better personality, though it's in jest, it is only a question that somebody who is high competition would ask, because that's how they look at the world, as in like they want to be the best and they measure themselves against other people.
There's not a better way to think about life. Is that? I feel like that's a fair statement.
I mean, so the high competition person thinks that they do it the best. Yeah,
that's also the right way to view life, right, Rosie? That's what we're also getting, is like the way to look at life from this.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. It's also a high self-assurance, high belief thing to say, which I'll tell you more about that. So, but I do want to tell you, there are, just so you know what you're looking at, because especially like when I put this up on a screen, especially if you're seeing it for the first time, it's like, oh my gosh, what are all these colors, these words? Help. And especially like, I don't know even what to do with this, much less understand what it means. And so
this is Bihano's, right? This is Daniel's, right?
Yeah, this is
mine.
So with Clifton Strengths, there's 4 domains, and there's these 4 different colors. You can see Daniel you have 4 of the colors in your top 10. Anybody has anywhere between 2 and 4 of these domains represented in their top 10 strengths. And on the left side here, there's these 34 themes, and they're technically not strengths. They're called themes because they're identifying the things you naturally do, think, and feel. And so your number 1 theme is the theme you naturally do, think, and feel the most of. And your number 34 theme is the thing you naturally do, think, and feel the least of. The goal is not to change the order, and it's something you only take one time. So it's not like DISC, if you're familiar with DISC, because Daniel, you were talking about communication styles. Like DISC I did that in my corporate world a lot, and it's really good for communication, but that can change over time, and you can modify your communication style. Strengths are different. They're not intended to change. You're always going to have a number 34. The goal is not to say, oh, well, my consistency is number 33. How do I be higher at consistency?
How do we make all of these number 1? You know?
If only. Okay, but I also have to tell a story about that, because Vina said, I know you guys just had her on last week. Her number 1 is competition. Her number 3 is woo, which like the number 1 question I get about the assessment is, what the heck is woo? So I'll just answer that. But woo stands for win others over. And so Daniel, I think it's in the middle for you. Jonah, it's your number 10. And so it's like, typically they're a mentality where there's no such thing as strangers, just friends they haven't met yet. They like to strike up conversations with strangers on the airplane, whatever the case may be. So typically they're people, they like to network. And a lot of times they are often good at sales. And so because of that, Vina thinks that for whatever reason, she has decided in her mind that that is the best strength. And she wants to retake the assessment so that she can get Woo to be her number one because she's decided it's the best. And I'm like, this is why nothing can ever be your number one other than competition, because you think there's a best strength and you want to retake it to get the best strength. But anyway, so all of that to say, they're right. The themes are neutral. They're neither good nor bad. Just because it's up high, it just means it's something you do think and feel a lot of. It's not automatically a strength because it's up high. It is, and I'll use some, like one of yours as an example, Daniel. So the least common theme to have up high, the least common Clifton Strengths theme is self-assurance, is the least common to have in your top 5, and command is the second least common. And the most intimidating of the themes is command. And some of the powers of command is they're very direct. So they can say the uncomfortable thing that nobody else wants to say, but that needs to be said. And they're good at moving to quick decision. And in general, it's, oh gosh, there's a third attribute I was highlight that I'm blanking on now. But so those are some of the key attributes of command, is like they will charge forward towards something and take action and make decision and speak up. And one where it can show up as a weakness, if you are pulling out your command and saying uncomfortable things in situations where you're having no regard for the person's feelings, or like reading the room to understand if that's an appropriate thing to say at that time, right? Like that doesn't, just because you have this ability to say uncomfortable things doesn't mean that it can't show up as a weakness too. It can be very damaging to relationships if you don't know how to use the power of it properly. And I would imagine with both
what I'm getting Rosie from that is that Keanu can sometimes be an asshole, more or less, is what I'm getting from that. No,
John, you're high command too. So, I mean,
and also I can be an asshole. I know. I'm just throwing it out there. We're on Keanu right now. We'll get to me later. We'll talk about that later.
You guys have a lot of similar themes, which is really interesting too.
You and I, Keanu, your number 1 is like my number 3, strategic. I noticed a couple of the few ones that we have similar.
Yeah,
or number
very
3,
interesting. Yeah. Okay, so it's rare
strategic
to have command in your top 5. That's one of the rarest to do.
Yes. Self-assurance is the rarest. So even having in a top 10 is rare. Command is the second least common. Significance is the third. The fourth is context, and the fifth is discipline. Usually, if you are higher end, like a futuristic theme, you're going to be lower context. Oh gosh, I'm already getting into the weeds here, but you're higher end futuristic. What else for you, Daniel? So I guess let me pause, and I can give you like a breakdown and ideas of what your themes mean. But just so because the 34 themes can be so overwhelming, just to really understand like what are all these words, what do they mean? What I love about the domains is like it offers a helpful lens for when you're getting started with Clifton Strengths, because with the domains they categorize. Gallup is the one that created this assessment, and they categorize each of the 34 themes into one of these 4 domains. And those are you have all 4 domains represented in your top 10, but everybody has a leading domain that's most intense for them. And okay. Your leading domain, Daniel, is strategic thinking, which is interesting because you have more purples in your, you just got 2 greens in your top 10. You have more purples in your top 10, but what your number 1 measures is when you took the assessment, you answered the most strategic questions and the least relator questions. When you were answering these green questions, you were answering them with the most intensity. Instead of the purple questions, you did not answer, even if you answered them more frequently, you didn't answer them more intensely. And why that matters is because your leading domain, that tells me typically what your first thought is going to be when you have a conversation or solve a problem or encounter any sort of circumstance. If you lead with strategic thinking, your first thought is to process. Like, okay, I need to wrap my brain around this. What's the best way to go about this? Now you, Daniel, because you have these purple and orange themes that are very fast-paced themes, your second thought might be like, okay, let's go. How do we move this forward? How do we take action? How do we build this into whatever else that we already have. How do we elevate this? The orange theme, the purple themes are about execution. The orange themes are about elevation and influence. So you probably pull on those very quickly after you process, but your themes would tell me that you do need some time and space for thought. But then you have these other like fast, the slower domains are the green and the blue, and the faster ones are the orange and the purple. So you are an intense thinker, but you take action quickly. So let me pause there. I'll say more about your profile, but I also do want to hear, if I'm going to be breaking you down relative to some of your ideologies, I'm going to need to hear a little bit more, because I don't know you two very well. I would need to hear a little bit more about you and what makes you so different. And like, yeah, just more about yourself and what's resonated so far.
Go into the Nephilim, Kiana.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. So here's what's interesting. So I'm gonna answer that, but I want to leave with a question, because what it sounded like to me, and I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the way you described the combination of the strategic thinking with the quick action, but with the elevation with that seems like a very, what I would expect to be a unique combination to be leading, I guess, strengths or priorities for a person. Is that a common combination that you see, or is that unique?
So actually, let me scroll down. And I'll say a couple things. I wanted to see, so if you go to the back of the report, I can usually guess at what somebody's second most intense domain is, but this confirms one way or another. So your second most intense domain is purple, and then orange, and then blue. So I will say one of the more unique ones is like green and orange are the most opposite. Green is the slowest, and it's an outcomes focused domain. And orange is the fastest, and it's a people focused domain. So you have your two most intense domains are outcome focused. And then after that is your influencing. But green is slower than green is slow outcomes focused, executing is fast outcomes focused. Why do I say that? So the least common like pairings of domains that I see are if your primary is green and your secondary is orange, or vice versa. If your primary is orange and your secondary is green, because it's like fast, slow, people outcomes. So you still have like your orange is generally intense, and you have those like just less common themes up high. So it would tell me, yes, like typically what can happen with green when they don't have these fast-paced themes, if you lead with green, when they don't have these other fast-paced colors to balance it out, is they can take too much time and space for thought, and they can go too slow. And so you have the benefit of being able to counter what your mind might want and want to allow more time for. You have the ability to pull on these other themes very quickly to get you out of analysis paralysis that can happen a lot for people that are high green.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because as I'm looking at these, I teach sales, right? And I've been in sales for a decent portion of my life. So communication leading to influence has always been a big thing for me, right? And it's funny that Woo in the influence type thing, that was lower on the category than I thought it would be.
And it's funny because, and this is like a concept that it takes time to really, really understand it, because like Clifton Strengths, it is a journey. But your strengths don't necessarily dictate what they can, and they often do, but they don't necessarily dictate what you're going to be good at. It's more they dictate how you do it. And so now that to say, like, if you slid somebody's assessment results in front of me and they were all orange and they were high woo, and they said, put this person in any role, I would give them a sales role, right? If they had orange. So there's absolutely like patterns to it. However, it is not an indicator of success if you don't have a traditional sales profile. It's if you know how to use the themes to get at the outcomes, to get at the other things that you bring to the table. And so, but I would also say, so part of the way that you are I don't know what's in what specific realm you're teaching sales. I'm assuming tied to the real estate industry, right?
Yeah.
But you're probably some of your sales tactics or strategies are tied to helping people move to decision. People that are high self-assurance are really good at setting direction for people and pushing people to take risks. And like Pace Morby's high self-assurance. He's like, I know this is where you need to go and you need to go. And Command, right, is like the no nonsense. They're going to look you straight in the eye and tell you the thing you don't want to hear, but it's going to it might push somebody to think differently. And so you probably use some of your like Command and self-assurance to help push people forward to make decisions. So versus somebody who's high woo might be successful in sales, right? Because that is more of like the kissing babies type of theme that that's just maybe not your sales style. Your sales style comes from some of your other themes.
Okay, so what questions, because I legitimately could ask you questions for the next 12 hours. So what questions about me would be helpful for you to know to help kind of extract from here what you need?
Yeah, I guess I would love to hear specifically in the context of like, maybe can you articulate for me what you essentially maybe let me reverse. My understanding is you want to talk a little bit more about like how you both complement each other potentially, but how you are individually like different and where you can both have these like very different perspectives on things and you'd like to come together in conversation on some, you're both high command, so like challenging
that makes
topics.
It sound like couples therapy, but yeah, basically.
So maybe just tell me a little bit, if my understanding is accurate, tell me a little bit more about like how you would describe how your perspective is unique from Jonas. So don't necessarily describe Jonas, describe how yours is.
Yeah, so I guess if I had to summarize, I've always been a weirdo. I've always been an outlier. Right? Like I have never in my life since maybe second or third grade fit in any capacity, no matter what I've done, from regular life to being in the military, to being in ministry, to not being in ministry, to being, I have never, and I spent over a decade really, really trying to fit in and it just never worked for me. And then I accepted my individuality. And then what I've learned, and it's funny that you say that about woo and about just any of these there or command, your greatest strength is usually also your greatest weakness until you learn how to master that, right? And so and Jonah and I have talked about this, I've always been extremely, since I was a kid. When I was 8 years old, I used to coach my friends on how to properly ask their parents for a sleepover, because if they didn't say it in this right order, they were going to decrease the likelihood of their parents saying yes, right? So
you've been number one strategic from day one, is what you're telling me. Okay.
Continue. I guess so. Yeah. And it was weird because I've always understood things. I understand people. I understand things. Before I got into real estate, I was doing government contracts. I was a business consultant because I can walk into a situation and I don't know why. I just get it. And the weird part is when I was younger, I had no reason to understand the things that I stood. I didn't have the experience to understand it. So I say all that to say this. I've always been good at understanding things. I've always been good at processing things and figuring it out. And I almost always do it in a freaking weird way. I never understand it the way anybody else does. So I can fit in and have a welcoming conversation. I'm always the weirdo. I'm always the outlier. But that leads me to the point to where that was a very difficult thing for me until I learned to be very comfortable in my individuality. And then I believe that made me very strong. And I think that just deducing what I'm trying to understand about things like command, I think that you are 1,000,000% correct. Like I have zero problem. Yvonne calls me an asshole at least 12 times a day. She'll be on my coaching calls. Because I'm on coaching calls all the time. She'll be listening to me. She's like, you're such an asshole. Why are you doing that? Like, they asked me for the truth, so I'm gonna give them the truth. So yes, and so the summary is, I think that those things, learning how to go from the insecurity of needing to fit in and not fitting in because you're an outlier, then accepting the strength that can come with that if you understand that self-assurance and being confident in who you are, okay with your, being vulnerable with your imperfections. And it's like kind of like I told Vina last week. I was like, look, I don't need to agree with everybody, but I will always listen and I will always tell you the truth, right? You never have to worry about if I'm going to lie to you, right? And so I think those things really kind of got me to the point to where I'm really, really comfortable in having my own thought process. I do not need anybody to influence my process on the way I view anything. If you give me a news article and everybody's screaming this and then the other people are screaming that, I'm gonna be the guy that's like, okay, that's cute, but what do I see from this? And I'm cool disagreeing with everybody on the planet and saying, I hear you, I respect you, but this is what I see. Here's why. Agree or disagree, but this is why. And I feel like there's such a strength and power in that independent thought. And it is one of the most lost things, at least in Western society. And so I think that's what I bring to this. That's my summary to that. And Jonah's response is you're normally like, yeah, but you sound crazy, dude. That's like, there's peer-reviewed data, right? Like, what about the professionals? And I'm like, who says I can't be a professional, right? So I don't know if that summary helps, but there you go.
Yes, it absolutely does. And I think part of why you two are really good together is because you have some of these really like matching intensity of Clifton's strengths. So though you have very different thought processes, you can like challenge each other in a way that you both need to be challenged. And that probably like, yeah, there's like a chemistry that comes from that. So, okay, thank you. And so I'll share. Oh,
or
sorry.
are you good off that? Do you need to hear my political philosophy at all, or are you good off Keanu's?
Yeah, I don't need to hear anything about you actually. Yeah, no, yeah,
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's go for it. And
Just double checking. I was like, is Keanu's summary of what I think basically good enough? Like, are we good with that? Like, just throwing it out there. I'll give you just my like where I get, because this is like, I mean, it's very interesting question in general. Like, it's very hard to figure out, in my opinion, like how do I come about the process of like how I think and how I came up to with my beliefs and all of that type of stuff. What I would like to think, right? But it's hard to tell if this is ever true or not, is that how I came up with most of my political beliefs, how I view the world, all of that is based on evidence. Like, I look at evidence, I look at as much physical evidence as I can. I do my best to censor out biases, all that type of stuff. And then through that, come to my conclusion about the world, truths, what is true, religion, politics, all of that. And I try to go from like, okay, here's like the evidence that I see. I am not as, I don't, at least for me, like I think a difference between me and Keanu is Keanu really, really wants to make sure he's not falling into one camp or the other really badly. I feel like you mention it every single time. To me, I don't care if I'm quote unquote on a team if it's the truth, right? I don't mind switching teams if it's like politics, if it's the truth, right? To me, that's the most important things, is to base your belief off of the truth as much as physically possible. It's not perfect. There's always bias. I grew up a liberal, so it's more likely I'm going to be liberal, right? I try to think that I take into conservatives' perspectives more. But in general, that's how I come up with most of how I view the universe, what is true about the universe, also what my political beliefs are. Generally in business too, I try to go through an evidence-based approach of like, okay, why did that screw up? Why did that not screw up? So that gives you a little perspective on mine, right? And then I gave you the breakdown earlier where I generally lean more left-leaning beliefs, right? Keanu generally leans right-leaning beliefs, and then we have beliefs that switch in between the two, right? Just depending, right? So that's also just generally what it is as well. So I hope that helps as well.
Yeah. Yes, it does. And it's very helpful. And as you were talking, yes, you have so much in common. I'm like toggling back and forth to be like, where's his this? Where's his that? So there's a couple things I'm going to highlight of where you're similar, and I've already done that, but I'm going to do a couple more things and just why I think it's interesting. So you both, let me scroll for you, Jonah, to see. So your leading is influencing, and then executing, and then strategic thinking. So you're like the inverse top three of Daniel, but you guys,
Harder than him, right? Is what this is saying.
That's actually
Wait, before that though, didn't you say that the most unique combo is orange leading and then purple right after? Is that what you said?
Orange leading and then green right
Nice try, buddy. Nice try.
I'm gonna be like, I'm more unique than you, boy. Never mind, keep going.
Okay, well, I am gonna say something that I feel like is gonna piss you off, Daniel, but I just gotta, it's the data.
It's the data.
The least common domain to lead with is influencing. So it is that
Sucks to suck.
it's not that. It's the least common domain to lead with. So I guess, as I say, that the least common combination is leading, influencing with secondary. Green, because yeah, they're opposites, and it's just it's less common. If somebody's going to have a weakest domain, is typically influencing. Mine over here, number 34 command. Okay.
Very good.
I said to Vina, I was like, if I got to get into any political discussions, like I got to have a high command person with me, because these guys seem real intense. But I'm glad we're not. But that saying, because I am high belief like you, Daniel. And so then I was like, where's Jonah's belief? So you're number 33 or number 3 belief. Daniel, Jonah, you're in the middle, which I was like, it seemed, based on everything you're saying, like it would
What
still
is
be.
belief?
So belief is
While you're explaining that, I have a surprise. Give me a second.
oh,
Dude, he always has some random fucking shirt or like some surprise that's hilarious.
when I was a kid, my
Can you
parents
hear Keanu?
Yeah.
Can you keep going? Okay, you can keep going though, even if he's not here.
Okay. So belief is a theme that is very rooted in a sense of like purpose and values. And so that's what I was saying to you, I think, before we hopped on, Jonah, where it's like they can tend to have black and white thinking on certain things. Like some things are just right and some things are wrong. And there's no, if they are tied to like these clear belief systems that they have, there is no wiggle room. There is no debating certain things for them. So typically they can get very fired up about their beliefs and they don't budge. So that doesn't surprise me about Daniel, especially I know it well because I'm also high belief, and there's certain things that are like, yeah, this is it. Don't try to talk me out of it. This is what I believe. And Daniel kind of said that when he was talking about himself without even knowing it. So I know he's gone. He's not here.
Keanu, I want your reaction to that. I feel like you won't like that. I don't think you're gonna like that description. Vina is a flat earther. Hilarious. Too bad Vina's not here, dude. You should have made that last
She
time.
missed out on her swag on the podcast. You see that?
Wow. How do I get one of those?
Yeah, why didn't you say Rosie is a flat earther or
Because
something?
Oh, I want to wear the one that says Vina is, but yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
got you. I mean, she did change the name of the chat to DQ is a flat earther. No. I actually love that. That's really interesting to me about belief. But what did I say without saying it? Without realizing that I said it?
You said that I don't remember your exact words, but you were basically like how you think it's important to have. It was when you were talking about the importance of having independent thought.
Yes.
Specifically, like you're not going to budge on certain things. So like you have, and I think where Jonah's saying, I don't think he's going to like this, is you kind of have these two sides where you're like, I like to weigh both sides, but I also dig my heels in, right? Like it's kind of like these two things that seem to coexist.
Yeah, no, and I actually agree with that because this is, I think, again, strengths, weaknesses, balance. I do a lot. I put a lot of intentionality into being as neutral as possible because I don't know everything, right? I just think it's naive to be like, well, it's true because I believe it. Well, you sound dumb. Sorry. I appreciate that, but you still sound dumb. And so I do a lot and put a lot of effort into making sure that if I have a strong opinion, it's based in something that's firm, but also simultaneously being open-minded to being educated, right? Hence the conversation we had with Vina last week. I try to really be intentional about that. And I think it requires intentionality. But yeah, I think it's interesting because that is a very big balance. And it's funny how this is playing out because I'm very strategic, which tracks with how I process information in my head. And I guess maybe is that telling that, okay, does this make sense that I'm firm in my beliefs, but I'm more firm in my need to actually be very thoughtful about my beliefs? So I would put more emphasis in my willingness to be open-minded and thoughtful than I will just the beliefs on their own.
Yes, it does. And what you're saying combined with what your strengths would tell me is you are thoughtful and intentional around the front end, and once you've cemented it, it's hard to move it from there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I'll always listen. I always will listen. But yeah, well, there is a point where it's just like, I'm going to listen to you. But if you don't respect your opinion enough to put the same amount of effort into my conclusions as I have, then why should I respect it that much? Right. And so I think, yeah, that's where that solidification comes into play.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So a couple more things I'm going to say that are just, I really, the more I like toggle back and forth, you two are just very similar. So one of the things that I think is interesting that is worth pointing out, because it's applies to both of your themes, though I don't like to let's talk about the bad part of strengths, but not that this is specifically a bad thing, but it's a watch out with strengths that you both have. And it's two things. One is both of you have your weakest domain as relationship building. Everybody has a weakest domain. There's no good or bad domain to have, weak versus strong. What it means when your weakest domain is relationship building is that you typically aren't thinking about like the impact that certain, if you're high command, right, you might not be thinking about the impact of the true impact of the intensity of what you're saying and how that might be impacting your relationships. Or especially if you're a lot of like purple, right? You both have a lot of purple and you're like moving forward to get things done. Relationships might go to the back burner. And I would even, I feel like as I talk about things, like I also realize that things, I also wonder if, right, the way that you both everybody builds relationships, whether they have blue themes in their top 10 or not. But part of the way that you two build relationship, like, is even what you do with each other, right? Like you're using your strengths to have these intense conversations, and that also strengthens your relationships with each other and also the people that are in your world that you bring into that. So that's one thing. The second thing is, and this this actually applies, I guess, more to Daniel's strength than Jonah, but it's still important to note, which is like self-assurance is the second most intimidating theme. And because that self-assurance is that like certainty, I'm charging forward toward it. So like Daniel, where we talked about, I was like, it's your belief self-assurance combo, which is like, this is where we're going. So you both have that. This is where we're going. This is the right path. What can happen if you're high strategic and high self-assurance together, but if you're low empathy with that? So Jonah, I thought initially it was in the middle or in the low for you, but it's in the middle. So when it's in the middle, anywhere between like 14 to 24 is what I would consider the middle. That means it's a theme that's not dominant. It's supporting. So it's a theme you turn on and off. Versus your top 10 to 13 are always on. You don't have to try to turn them on. You don't have to try to be high competition. You just are. So Daniel, your empathy is number 29. And the reason that combination of high self-assurance, high strategic with low empathy, specifically, though this can also apply just to if you're low relationship building, is that you don't, low empathy means you don't use emotions as a data point when you are coming up with the strategy and the path and the plan. You're missing a key data point if you're low empathy, because you're not naturally collecting that emotional data. And so you're going to build the wrong strategy sometimes. That happens a lot of times when I see like CEOs that are that combination, they can miss things because of that. And so Jonah, yours is in the middle, but it's also like, so let's take her on. You might still be pulling in emotions as a data point, but are you also pulling in just the relationship building elements as a data point?
I have to remember it though. Like I have to consciously put it on. That
yeah.
definitely makes sense. I definitely see that. I mean, it's literally like what we were talking about today, Keanu, right? Like I had someone quit today. And I think one of the main reasons is like, I wasn't giving her space to express emotions enough. I think for her, I feel like that was like a much bigger thing. Well, for me, I'm like, we gotta get stuff done, right? So no, I definitely see that.
Daniel's thinking over there.
No, I'm just processing all this stuff. Like it's just super interesting.
It's really interesting. What so let's talk about it like let's bring it back to belief systems, right? So like I just feel like it's interesting in this sense, right? Because one of the things you told both of us is it's not going to, your personality is not going to tell you what you believe, just how you come up with it. So talk to us a little bit about like, other than like what me and Keanu believe are the ways that we come up with our beliefs, does our personalities tell you anything about like how we might come up with how we look at the world or how we see the world?
Yeah. So I don't think about it from that same lens. So I'm trying to
or how do you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like however you think about it.
Yeah, I will. That's gonna marinate as I'm talking. So this, when I look at whenever I do strengths with people, especially if it's like a team or a partnership or somebody's like, look at our team makeup and who's the next person we should hire. And I'm always like, first and foremost, like they have to be somebody who's aligned in your goals and values. And I'm not going to see the things that you value as an individual person on a piece of paper, right? Like this is like your strengths don't tell me what your values are, the things that are important to you, your goals, what you want to get out of life, your upbringing, all of those things. And so kind of same thing, like your strengths are not going to tell me what your belief system is, but it might tell me the way, not necessarily the way that partially, this is what you were saying, partially the way you formed your beliefs, but more it's like how your beliefs manifest, how you justify those beliefs, how you bring those beliefs forward into the world. It's more of like the latter than it is the former. So, but like with you both being high competition, and I'll hit on Maximizer too for you, Jonah, but you're both high competition, right? So like you measure, competition wants to be the best, and the way that they measure being the best is against other people. Maximizer, which is your number one, Jonah, wants to like have the best. Essentially, high maximizer is like the best quality. It's about measuring quality and excellence. And so why do I say that? Oh, so like you both might, as you're forming like opinions, right? You might think that your opinion or your perspective or your way of thinking like is the best. And if you're for high belief for Daniel, is like you might think there is a right or a wrong for certain things where other people don't look at it that way. It's gray for them. And you're like, this is absolutely not gray. So it's going to inform, like you just generally, Daniel, might be more likely to dig your heels in on certain beliefs. And same for you, Jonah, with being like high maximizer, you might have an expectations around like excellence and quality for maybe how somebody arrives at the same, like kind of what Daniel said, like, I expect you to have done the same due diligence that I have. Like that was a comment that he made, but you might also have expectations around how somebody arrives at whatever conclusions they come to, because you like, and actually, as I'm saying this, I'm realizing you did, like when you talked about how data is so important to you, because data ultimately ties to something that is excellent quality, because if it's good data and it's good science, right, it has been held to a certain level of scrutiny, and so that makes something excellent. So I don't know if I can go more into that, but I guess I want to pause and like ask if that makes sense, because it's kind of
totally makes sense.
Sticky. Yeah.
No, 100%. Where's Quijano's maximizer? Just real quick.
It is.
Wow.
It's why you don't like evidence, dude. You just don't care about the maximizer.
I knew you were going there as soon as you asked.
Yeah, do you care? Quijano, first off, do you mind that I just make these jokes? Because it's hard for me not to like do it. I mean, you're in the comments being like, evidence is your third grade teacher and your mom. So if you're, I'm throwing it in there. I'm throwing it also in there, I'm sorry.
I understand, right? Because as the smarter strength in our duo, I understand why you would need to rely on somebody else's evidence when I feel a little more comfortable on relying on my ability to think for myself. This makes sense to me. I understand this.
Anyways. So you can keep going, Rosie. We're just gonna jab at each other in the middle of this, because that's how we're gonna have fun with this. Obviously, is being like, oh, so you're saying Quijano's an a-hole by having a high command, and also me, because it's even higher for me, right? But
I did have a question, Rosie, because I noticed mine, and every single one of these tests I've ever taken in my life, I am always like right in the middle. And I noticed that with mine, with the colors, it was pretty evenly balanced. Is that common? Is that uncommon? Does that mean anything? Or
yeah, you mean with these you're saying?
Yeah,
or
correct.
Usually I would say this is a pretty traditional traditional like distribution of differentiation
Okay.
This guy just wants to be unique at everything, dude.
I really got him when I said he was
like all of your questions are like,
I feel like I won this thing by having one of the like two of the most rare ones in my on my top. I felt like this is how I won this game. I feel
that's
like
how you won. I love it.
I've accomplished something. But
Okay, so anyways, Rosie, you keep diving in. You said you thought you had more to keep. You can keep diving in. Me and Kona, if you just give us a pause, all we're gonna do is rip into each other. So
But as you do, it just tells me more things about your strengths, because I'm like, oh yeah, Daniel, you're low significance, and people that are high significance, which you're high, Jonah, like significance typically wants to feel special. So I'm like, it's not, Daniel doesn't care about feeling special, but he wants to win. Yeah, that's why you want to know if it's not actually about being special for you.
So I'm actually the special butterfly guy. I want to feel like I want to feel like a special butterfly. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, and I want to address Naomi. Naomi, you make a point out there, but I think that what Rosie's saying, I think it actually is accurately, because this isn't telling me who I am. This is telling me why I act the way I act in regards to who I am, right? So let's talk about woo. If mine is, can you go to mine, Rosie, real quickly?
Yeah, sorry. I was reading Naomi's comments. That's what I'm trying to process as you keep going.
Yeah, and Rosie, please correct me where I say this improperly, right? So, yeah, this is Yvonne. This is the lovely lady upstairs who just made this shirt for me. And I guarantee you, when she saw empathy down here near the toilet in my list, she was like, "That's what I'm saying."
The spouse always loves when they find out about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to look at it.
Yvonne, I understand. I get it.
But here's the thing, right? Like, so woo for me, like when I understand it in this particular context, Naomi, if you ever sit into one of my training courses, and you've been to some of my classes, right? When I was doing some of my challenges, everything about the way I teach sales and communication and influence and your ability to get people to open up to you and trust you, I do that because I'm intentional about being very strategic with how I understand and approach conversations. Everything's intentional. So Naomi, I'll give you a context. When I was yesterday, one of my coaching calls, student brought a call. We reviewed the call, and I literally just went through the call and said, here's what I would have done here. Here's why, because here's what I heard. You guys, as I'm saying that, you can see people's faces go blank, because they're like, why would you pay attention to that? And what my response was, Naomi, was, when you guys hear me have these conversations and 30, 60 seconds in, I tell you everything about this person and everything about the way this conversation is going to go, because I listened to the way that they modulated their voice and the tone in which they answered this question. I can tell you everything I need to know about this person and how I need to approach them. What I was trying to tell them is the mechanics of what my brain hears to inform me on how I'm able to do that. So my ability to do stuff that people seem like, that's impossible, how do you do that? It's actually very, very strategic. So it makes sense to me that strategy is what's informing what people would perceive to be influence or woo, because it's not woo that's happening by itself. It's strategy being deployed intentionally. Is that a fair way to answer that? That's my understanding of this.
That's absolutely perfect. And the only thing I would add to it is, like, if we're specifically talking about woo, yours is in the middle. So it just means you don't lead with it. But still at number 20, it's a theme I say you turn it on. So you are probably strategic about times where you turn on your woo. Like, it's a tool that you can pull on once in a while, but it's not always there because it's not in your top 10. And so everything that you said, and you still can pull on your woo. Your woo is the same place as Jonah's empathy. You can pull on it. It's just not always there.
Okay. So these, at least for these other ones, maybe even if it's just the top 5, like, what do these mean? What is a ranger? What is ideation? Connectedness, achiever? I think those seem self-explanatory unless they're not. Like, what do these mean?
Yeah. Yes, they are self-explanatory, and they're not, right. It's like, yes, you could make a guess of what some of these mean. Sure. So I'm going to tell you just like the qualities of some of these, especially because you have so much overlap. And I know I had to go at 7. I texted my husband because I told him I was only going till 7, and he had figured. So, but I asked him if he could give me some more time, and we're good. So
appreciate that. Can I just say first off, really appreciate you doing that, because I was like sad. I was like, oh, she has to leave in like 1 minute. And I'm like,
I don't know. Yes, he's good.
I want to hear more. Okay, keep going.
7 my time. I'm in Chicago. So, okay. So strategic, that is your number 1, Daniel, and Jonah, your number 4. So, and sometimes, sometimes people get hung up on like the order where they're like, oh, but it's only my number 9. Like your top 10 are always on, and the difference between your number 9 and your number 3 is not that big. So don't discount whatever is in your top 10 just because it's only number 10. It's still very intense, and always on. So that said, strategic is a theme. So it's in the strategic thinking domain. People that are high strategic like to come up. I always say they think in terms of chess moves. So they think multiple steps ahead. They're always planning for what can go wrong. So they can see things, they can see the problems before they're going to happen, and they've already come up with possible solutions for the problems. And what's unique about strategic is like they like to come up with the plan, but they don't necessarily like to execute on solving the problem. They want to come up with the solution to the problem. They don't necessarily want to execute on solving the problem. The themes that like to execute on solving the problem is restorative. That's like typically engineers are high restorative. They like want to get their hands in and solve the problem. So for you, that's both like kind of in the lower half, so that you both like to come up with a strategy. A ranger is like they like to, it's an executing theme because they can take a lot of like complex things and prioritize them and make sense of them and saying, okay, yes, let's handle this, throw this over here. And especially when you combine it with strategic, you're like arranging strategically, and you can do it with things and ideas. You can do it with people. So you kind of just know how to put all of the puzzle pieces together. Then belief, we talked about. Ideation it's a very creative theme. Like strategic and ideation together is very creative from like a problem solving perspective. And but ideation in general is just, they love new ideas. They get excited about like more is more when it comes to ideas for people that are high ideation. So it's very creative.
I've definitely seen that. I've definitely seen that in some of our conversations. The idea of like what was it? Was it a huge fan or a laser to put out the fires? What was it? Like I think it was a huge laser. That was creative. I'm going to give you that. Like we had a whole conversation about the California fires, Rosie, and like Kiana was like, "Dude, let's see if we shoot a laser at it to put out the fire." I don't know, like that might work. I know that makes it sound way stupider. He actually gave a pretty good answer. That was like a little bit more, but like I was like, "All right, that's creative."
Yes. And and they get people that are high ideation. All of these, like you typically, whether you've taken the assessment or not, you typically know you're working from your strengths when they feel easy. You don't realize you're doing them and they're energizing. Like those are signs that you're working from your strength. So like, yeah, generating, like it is exciting to think about like, oh, what are creative ways we can come up with like how to solve this problem? And okay, so command, we talked about command. And I can share more about some of the other few. Do you want me to pull in a couple from Jonah's top 5?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I talked about self-assurance. We talked about strategic, and maximizer. Okay. So achiever is a theme. Like I'll say, if you're high activator, which you're both like supporting on activator, I think. Yeah, it's both in the middle for both of you. Activator is very quick to get started. Just for context, like Vina is high activator. Pace Morby, it's his number 1. So activator is like, they're a catalyst. And that's why it's an orange influencing theme, because they're also really good at activating other people. Achiever, make sure that things get finished. So, and where are you? Achiever, I think it's high for you too, Daniel. Yeah. So achiever is like typically people that are high achiever they like some form of a to-do list, even if it's just a mental to-do list, but they typically start their days knowing the things that need to get done or that they want to take care of in a given day. And versus somebody that's like high, usually if you're high achiever, you're low adaptability. I'm trying to see where yours is. Yeah, you're like middle low, and
we're both 23.
Both. Oh, okay. So yes, like adaptability is like, and when I say that to people that are high achiever, they're like, doesn't everybody start their day like that? No, they don't. People that are high adaptability will start their days and the wind will just take them where it takes them. And for high achievers, like absolutely not. But they tend to work very quick. They are typically like they set the pace of work for a team. They work really well with other people that are high achiever, which I understand why you both, one of the many reasons I think you enjoy collaborating together. And they usually take on a lot. They can get a lot done. So if the average person can get 10 things done in a day, high achievers like, cool, I'm going to get 20 things done. And they probably will beat themselves if they only get up to 19, just because they're like a more is more when it comes to that. And then Jonah, is what's really interesting for you is like the most intense of the executing themes, and arguably, I would say like some of the most intense themes in general are like focus is the most intense, then I would say achiever, and then responsibility. And so focus is a theme where it's like, if they have a goal, if they know what they want to do, especially if you're high self-assurance. So like if you kind of say like, this is where I'm going and we're going to take some risks, your focus is like, and we're off, and they can like put blinders on, and they are like, if that doesn't mean they're immune to shiny object syndrome, but they will like revert back to make sure that they stay the course toward the goal. And I'll click to then responsibility, because I think you're both high responsibility too.
Same 6. We're both 6.
6. Okay. Yes. And what can happen? Burnout. The two most likely themes to experience any type of burnout is, independently of each other, achiever and responsibility. And so when you put them together, they're like a recipe for experiencing burnout at some point in their life, because they, achiever, I said, like they can get a lot done. So they will like always more is more. I can do a lot. I'm going to do more. Versus like responsibility, they take a lot of psychological ownership over things. And so whether that can be like, my word is my bond. If I say I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do it. Or it can also be taking ownership over other things. Like they have a team member that's struggling, right? And they feel a responsibility to go in and help them, even if it's not their thing. Or like, oh, I'm just going to take back this project that I gave somebody because I have a responsibility to the client to make sure it gets done. And I can't wait for my team member to get their act together. So typically where responsibility can burn out is they just take things that aren't even theirs to take because of that high sense of duty and responsibility. Let me give you the last two that I didn't hit on, which are connectedness. And I coached with something yesterday. It was who was high connectedness. And when I described it, she was like, isn't everybody like that? And it's like, no, that's what's so cool about the assessment is like, you don't even realize that some of what these things about you, like the things that you do think and feel, are unique. And sometimes you think everybody does that. Like if I am high futuristic, I always thought everybody else was like, I thought everybody thought the way that I did. And then I realized my husband's number 34 futuristic. And I'm like, no wonder I'm number 2. Anytime I try to talk to him, like, can't you see what's possible? He like looks at me like I'm crazy. And so now I know not everybody thinks that has those same thinking styles. So connectedness is, typically they can be very like spiritual or faith-based in some capacity, whether that's religious or not. They think that they typically think there's something that's greater than all of us, and right, that makes us connected to each other. So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We're better together. And like when I do something over here, I very much recognize that it's going to have an impact over here, whether I know what that is yet or not. And then the last one, we hit on woo, we semi hit on significance, just to close the loop on that, because I didn't really touch on it. I just like joked about it. Significance wants to make a big impact. They think about things like legacy, and when I said they like attention, it's not actually about the attention. It's more about like, they want to know that what they're doing matters. And so, yes, having some sort of recognition or attention is a way that they know that what they're doing matters, right? So they think about things like that, legacy, making an impact, doing work that matters. And then input, which you're higher end input too, Daniel. Yeah, it's your number 13. So input is like, they like to take in and collect and aggregate information, specifically because they think it's going to have some sort of utility that they can use later. And where that differs from learner, which you both are still higher, it's your 11, Daniel, it's yours, Jonah. Learner likes to learn for the sake of learning. So it's like, it's not about the destination, it's just about the journey. They're fascinated by new ideas and information. That's learner. Input needs an output. It's like, I'm taking this in not because it's fascinating, but because I think it's going to I can use this later. So sometimes they can be like an information hoarder, and they're like, oh, I can pull this out of the archive. I have this thing that I can give you now. So I'm number 1 input. So I just data dumped on you guys with all of this, but I hope it's enough to like make you feel like, okay, I understand them, like, 0.1%. And I'm happy to answer either other questions for it or go deeper on this like topic of, now that you do understand a little bit more, how you might see it showing up in your dynamics, or like your ideologies and belief systems that you've developed now that you understand more about the strengths?
I think it definitely makes sense. I feel like it's easier to apply to business than it is to apply to politics or like universal beliefs. Something I was noticing too, Kiana, that is a little interesting is like, look at my connectedness is very low in comparison to yours, right? Because we have our similarities, right? But I'm kind of interested more in the differences a little bit, just because I feel like that explains, because you and I politically and ideologically are very different. So it's like interesting how like but like our personalities are similar. So this makes sense to me in that sense, right? So like what would it say if somebody has like low connectedness? Like I'm just curious, just because I want to focus on some of the differences.
Yeah.
What would that say in terms of like I am not very religious also, right? Like I would consider myself somewhat spiritual, but like I'm curious if that could relate to our religious conversation, since you brought it up like that, Rosie.
Yes. I guess maybe say a little bit more when you say you are somewhat spiritual. Like, what does that mean for you?
Like, I do believe, for instance, like, I don't feel like everything is material. Like, I feel like there is, I don't know if higher power is the right word. I feel like there is like a rhyme and reason to the universe, and like what humans call spirituality, maybe one day could be discovered by science, right? And I think there are things in science that definitely would explain spirituality, certain parts of spirituality. And then there are also things that just science can't explain that's just fascinating, right? Where like, I don't know, like there's this thing called quantum entanglement. I know this is getting really into the freaking weeds, but basically you can do something to an atom here and then do the same thing to the atom on the other side of the world, and they're connected, right? By what looks like magic to me, right? And in that way, at least like in terms of religion and stuff like that, I don't subscribe to the supernatural that much, but I do subscribe to like this idea that like I feel like there is a connectedness between humans. Like we all are related. We're biologically related. We're like we affect each other like emotionally and intellectually. So I just don't go into like supernatural, like it's God necessarily. I just go into like, it could be psychology. It could be like these scientific things we don't understand. And that in itself becomes spirituality for me, at least, where it's like, okay, we are all connected. Like atoms can connect to each other. Like why can't a human like emotionally and spiritually be connected? So I don't know if that 100% makes sense, but that's like my religious spiritualish beliefs.
It does. And as soon as you started saying that, I was like, okay, this is actually what I was going to say, which is like the way that you were talking about was so pragmatic, right? You're like, yes, I believe in spirituality because I have intellectualized all of these things about spirituality,
Exactly.
Which is why you're low connectedness, right? Versus like people that are high connectedness are like, it's not about logic. It's about that, like that feeling of being connected by something greater and trusting something that cannot be, it even, like, I can't even articulate the exact words that I'm trying to say because they don't the words don't even fully exist. Like but the people that are typically high connectedness are usually the ones that are good at describing it. But yes, it's like, it's more intangible for people that are high connectedness, and this, like that greater connection, and and the reason it's a relationship building theme is that allows them to build like deeper connections with people because of that, because they have this like just general sense of like they are always like aware, whether it's in their conscious or unconscious mind, of like their connectedness to the greater humanity. So yours is like you believe in certain elements of it in theory or like logically or pragmatically, but it's not something that like you're attuned to with any level of consistency, I would say.
I think that makes sense.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was actually going to talk about individualization too, because you guys are kind of opposite there too. But go ahead.
That's another opposite. Yeah. Like your individualization is pretty high, Keanu. Mine is like my last one. So I was curious about that.
Okay.
But ask your question and then I'll jump to that.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, so if you look at mine, here's what's interesting, right? Because, you know, if I'm leading with strategic, and my assumption is that includes being very analytical, an analytical person being extremely spiritual, which I was in ministry for over a decade, right? So that's an interesting combination that almost seems like it would be contradictory to a degree. I can explain in my head based on my experience how that made sense to me. But what are your thoughts on that from the outside?
It's not like I would say it's not like an uncommon pairing to be high strategic and high connectedness.
Okay.
Like a couple people that are high connectedness that we would mutually know are like Jamil, which makes sense, right? When you think about Jamil, it's high connectedness, and Anne Marie Norton is high connectedness, which also makes a lot of sense if you know Anne Marie. So Jamil leads with relationship building. Anne Marie leads with strategic thinking. She has a lot of green themes in her top 10, and she's high strategic. And so it's just more like if you are high strategic and you're high connectedness, the way that your connectedness shows up is like, you might, where Jonah is like intellectualizing on the front end to kind of be like, to look for like some sort of like proof or whatever that like the spirituality exists. I'm oversimplifying, but yours is more like my connectedness is like, I know this exists, and my strategic mind has me asking more questions about it. And typically, like with a lot of things with faith, like people that question it, like it can end up deepening their beliefs even further because they are questioning it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but my point is like, yes, they do coexist. And the way that it shows up is just unique when it's connectedness with strategic versus connectedness. If you were all blue, like Jamil is mostly blue, for example.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, because for me, I got into spirituality, I guess I've always kind of believed in God. But I had some really significant spiritual encounters when I got out of the military, which kind of was like, okay, this stuff really happened. So, okay, I know I need to go this direction. There's about 5 years in, I started asking some really hard questions. And I almost went through this journey of almost kind of trying to prove like Christianity wrong. And in the effort, I studied ancient cultures, belief systems, oral traditions versus written traditions, pretty much the origin of every single belief system on the planet to try to see where this all came from. And that's how, on my personal journey, I came to the conclusion of my beliefs and affirming about what I believe when it comes to these things, because I use strategic thinking. And one thing we've talked about this, Jonah and I did a podcast about how do we know what we know? Why do we believe what we believe? And how do we learn things? And what I told him is that in that journey where I did that, one thing I learned really, really quickly is that confirmation bias is your biggest enemy if you want to learn something. Because if you want to learn to prove yourself right, it's going to take you about 3 seconds. But that doesn't mean you've learned anything. You just proved what you already believed to be true. That doesn't make it true. And so what I started out to do, which took me many, many years longer, is I didn't look to see if I can confirm what I believe. I actually studied to prove myself wrong. And then when I could not disprove something anymore, okay, now you're qualified to be on the list of a possibility. And I just literally disqualified everything. And what was left, that's where I build my story from. So it's interesting. I used that strategy to go. I just didn't know if that was contradictory, but it sounds like it's not. That's super, super interesting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. And there was something else you said. What was it about your belief that made me, it'll come back to me.
So let me ask you this about significance. Significance for me is very low, but for me, like a big part internally, what drives me is like, I want to change the world. I want to have a huge impact on the world. Is there something else in my top 10 that drive for me that significance doesn't?
So a couple places where it would be likely to come from would really, the 3 most likely places are your belief, your connectedness, and potentially your responsibility. But it's almost like understanding like a layer deeper of like, a lot of people want to change the world, right? A lot of people want to make money. A lot of people want to have kids, but it's like, why? Like understanding those layer deepers. And if I understood the why you want to make a positive impact and in what ways you want to make a positive impact, that's when I would be able to say, oh, okay, that comes from these strengths. But so that's why it's like at first pass, it would probably be coming from something like your belief, connectedness, or potentially responsibility. But if you told me more, like gave me one layer deeper, I could probably tell you even more about where that would come from in your strengths.
No, and that makes sense. And when I just even off of that, I can see really, really quickly where that makes sense, because I think it is largely my beliefs and the things in my connectedness that drive who I am and why I feel like I'm here. And so, yeah, that would drive that. That's super. Okay, let me ask you this, Rosie. We're talking about this. Obviously, we talked as it relates to the podcast, but maybe we can wrap before you have to leave with using that. But even before that, how could somebody who takes this use this as a tool to drive their decisions in life? What I mean by that is this. Obviously, in our circles, everything is business related. We're business people. We work ridiculous amounts of hours on any given day, and we don't, right? Because we're here to accomplish shit. That's what we want to do. Okay, cool. But so when I hear Jonah's stuff, I hear my stuff, I understand, oh, this is why Jonah succeeds in business, and this is what he's going to do to succeed in business. I hear that, right? But I know that not everybody thinks like that. So my question is, for anybody, whether they're a business person that's in our circles, or they're just the average person who's living life, who has no interest in, crushing goals, or, being overly ambitious, how does someone take an assessment like this and say, I want to improve the quality of my life on a daily basis based on understanding what I learned here?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And it ties to like what Jonah had also said something similar when I came on. He's like, I know you usually talk about this in business, but like, I'll tell you a little secret about the coaching industry is like, we call it business coaching or executive coaching. It's all life coaching. It's all the
100%.
same thing, just with a different label. So yes, what my first conversation with somebody might be about this in the business sphere. But when I work with people on an ongoing basis, it's like we are whole humans, and the ways that you show up to your business in the ways that are working and are not working are also showing up in your personal life. And so if you can't just say, oh, well, I only want to work on this part of myself when it pertains to my business, right? And so that said, like this tool can be used in a very holistic way, and should be. It's much more impactful when you are able to look at it that way. So using something like this in a practical way in your day-to-day life, whether that's being better in whatever aspect of business at your job, or it's being a better partner to your spouse or your significant other, or if it's being a better parent, a better friend, a better daughter or son, whatever the case may be. So the first thing is, and it's really the key thing is there's the journey of Clifton Strengths. They coined this phrase that's called name it, claim it, aim it. And so if you take the assessment, which I highly recommend it, because it's something you only take one time, you take it once and then you're done. And just start by understanding, okay, well, like you just look at your top themes. Don't worry about what's at the bottom yet. Like that, it takes time to understand it. So just look at what's up high, read the definitions of what they mean, and specifically what they mean for you. And Jonah, you may know this just because you were exposed to Clifton Strengths before. Daniel, I wouldn't expect you to know this just because you're hot off the press with your report. But in this report, if you go starting on page 3, it's going to tell you, okay, this is your number one strength is strategic, Daniel. And this is the definition. This is what, when we say strategic, that's what this means. However, this is the way that your strategic, Daniel, is going to show up in these colored boxes, taking into account the fact that your self-assurance is number 10 and your maximizer was number 33. So it takes into account your unique combination. And I think that that's really cool because none of these themes or words exist in a vacuum. So the way, like your strategic the way it shows up is informed by the way that the fact that your number 2 is a ranger, et cetera. So just start by reading the report. All right, I'm giving this through the lens of having taken the report, reading the report, understanding what these words mean and how they're likely to look for you. And then the claim portion is like, how do I embrace like, okay, yes, I understand this, like what these words mean and how they're likely to show up for me. I embrace like, yes, this actually is who I am. And that embracing it can take some time, and different themes you might embrace right away and other ones you reject for a while. But starting to see like, where have I noticed these things show up in my life in the past? And then the third piece is like, okay, now you understand. I understand what this word means. I understand, like, yes, this actually is how I show up in the world. And I recognize that there's power in that. And I also recognize that there's challenges that come with that. But it's what makes me unique. There's a 1 in 33 million chance that you will have the same top 5 themes in the same order as somebody else. So your like strengths, footprint is very unique. And so it's like, and then how do I use it intentionally? And I'll tell, for people that haven't taken the assessment, I'll give you some ideas of how you can do that without even having the assessment. But if you have the luxury of having taken the assessment, it's like, look, once you understand your themes, you're like, okay, well, where has this served me well in the past? Where have I seen, let me read the description of belief. And it's like, let me think back. You can do it in 2 ways. One is like, when have I used belief to be successful? But what I actually think is the easiest is look back at times in your life where you have been successful in whatever way that means for you. So look back on the lives where it's like, yeah, I was getting out of bed every day in the morning when I wanted to get out of bed, or I was really thriving in my relationship with my spouse. And right. So whatever it was that you're aiming for, look back to prior successes and say, what themes was I using then? And so it's like looking back at prior successes to identify like, oh, that's because me and my spouse were really grounded in our connectedness. And I didn't realize that we'd gotten away from that. So like, how can I use my connectedness more in my relationship going forward? So those are like a really easy way to get started. And if you don't have the assessment, it's like, it's so counterintuitive to like grind entrepreneurial culture, but there is data, Jonah. I was a former actuary. All right. Like I am a big data gal. Okay. And there is so much data and research, and Gallup is a large like research-based organization. And the research that they've done has showed that when you work from your dominant strengths, if you work from them every day, you are people that are surveyed about it and they say they use them every day. Those people are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their work and 3 times more likely to say that they have an excellent quality of life. So it's beyond just work. Like you're more productive at work. It does lead to better sale. Like, right. If you're in a sales role, you generate more sales if you're working from your strengths. So there's so many different data points I can point you to tell you why this is not just like rah, let's all work from our strengths. But it's counterintuitive because we're sold this notion that things are supposed to feel hard. And Clifton Strengths is like, yes, you can work hard, but it shouldn't feel as hard as it always feels. Like if it feels like the wind is taken out of your sails, you've got no gas in your tank and you're just grinding through it, you're probably trying to work from your bottom strengths, right? And if it feels more natural and it feels easier and like you're able to produce faster results that feel like this is like, why does this feel so easy? It's probably because you're working from your strengths. And so it's not just like a nice concept. Wouldn't it be great if we could all work from our strengths participation trophy? It's like the data says that we will have better outcomes. We will feel better, all of the above when we work from our strengths. So if things are feeling draining, you're probably not working from your strengths. If things are feeling energizing, you probably are. Try to identify what's happening there so you can do more of it.
So I have one quick question. I got to know. What are my weaknesses here? Do I have weaknesses? Like, do we, and I guess it's all relevant.
Follow up with that. Whose weaknesses are better or worse?
That most important question.
Are more
like really, but the final question is, who's a better human being?
Yeah. Who's stronger, smarter, who's weaker?
Like all of that was great, Rosie, but I really didn't get the info that I needed out of this entire thing.
That's really what we're getting at here. And thank you for dropping. I just saw that in the chat. Thank you for dropping that. Yeah, and like you can order it. It's rosienoel.com/order too. That's like an easy place to grab it.
Oh, that's an easier way. I'll try to do that. Okay.
Well, this link, I think it probably pulled it from my Instagram profile, which also works. But no, what you have is good. You're good. Okay. So yes, this conversation is always confusing, and I'm like we're dumping a lot into a short amount of time. So weaknesses can show up anywhere, because remember, what you have up high is not automatically a strength. A weakness can show up anywhere. I gave the command example of or a competition is a perfect example too. Like it can show up with anything. If you are trying to win at any cost and you're burning bridges and you're damaging your relationships, that's not competition showing up as a strength. You're doing it because it's something you naturally do. But so any of these themes up high can show up as a weakness. Just because it's at the bottom doesn't mean it's automatically a weakness. A weakness, that the way Gallup defines it for this assessment, is anything that gets in the way of your success. And so it's like, as you're taking inventory, and with this report, like I mentioned, on page 1 is where it gives you kind of the customized breakdown of your results. But on page 3, starting on page 4, for each of your top themes, it gives you examples. And Daniel, like I said, you're new, so I do recommend after this going and reading your report. It gives you bullet points of, here's how these are generic for strategic. So everybody's report will read the same if they're high strategic. But these are bullet points of like, how can I use my strategic more intentionally? So it'll give you some inspiration there of how to use some of your strengths. And then there's the watch out for blind spots. So it will tell you for your top themes, what are some ways that some of these themes might get in your way, and how can you be mindful of those things a little bit more? So read about the blind spots and say, like, do I feel like these are showing up for me? Are any of these things getting in my way today that could be showing up as a weakness? So it's like, look for weaknesses in your strengths. And then yes, at the bottom, it's like, is being low relator getting in my way? Relator builds deep relationships with people, and they're typically very good at being vulnerable in conversations, and they typically have a small circle they like to go deep with. So it's like, is that getting in my way, having it low? If the answer is no, you don't need to do anything about it. So just notice where things are getting in your way, and then but your strengths are the solution to everything. The goal is not to say, well, how do I be a person who's high relator? It's like, well, when I need to be vulnerable and when I need to build those depths of relationships, how do I do that from my top 10? Because that's where your greatest potential is, because you're already naturally doing those things. Let's just tweak using it intentionally.
I honestly thought 34 said realtor, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll never be a realtor.
The amount of people when I coach in real estate, they're like, yeah, I'm number 2 realtor. That makes sense. And I'm like, oh, wait, I know, I wish. But
Reading's fundamental. Yeah. Do you think this is relative? Because this is very, very true. I don't like it legit. If you told me to, like, hey, Daniel, you got 7 minutes or 30 seconds and you got to speak in front of 8 million people, I'm good. I genuinely have no problem whatsoever. I won't blink. I probably would get really excited. But she's right. You give me a spreadsheet, my brain breaks. Like, all of the variations. So is that just another manifestation of just recognizing, right? This is know your strengths. When you're in there, you're operating. When you're not, then that's why.
Yes, essentially. And it's interesting too. Yeah, like with your themes, it's like, okay, well, what is it that drains me about this? And what is it that lights me up about, if like for the things that light me up, I got like a toddler knocking on my door, so I got to go in a moment. But for the things that light me up, what strengths do I think are lighting me up? And when I look at the spreadsheet and my brain breaks, what is it about that? Is it because you don't like being behind the scenes? Is it because it requires you to go too slow and you don't want to go, like you want to go fast? You have this tendency to go fast. And is it that? So it's all like, some of it can be, but yes, if something is draining you, like, to make it super simple, yes, find ways to either not do it, to get somebody else to do it. And if you have to do it from your strengths then, right? Do it in a creative way that leverages your top strengths instead.
Very cool. Jonah, go ahead, man. I know you were trying to say a couple things before she goes.
No, I love it. I mean, I know you got to go, right? So we don't have to, I know you got to go. We don't have to go into my weaknesses too much right now because, I don't think there are any.
There's none. There's none. That's fine.
Based on this report, I think we're good. I think we got our answer anyways that we needed about the final question. Since you have to go, Rosie, I'm just going to say this. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find more about you, your socials? Where can they find this assessment if they're interested in working with you? Because I know we did this in Based on Politics and we did a little bit of it in business. But I guess just real quick before you leave, how would someone A, get the test, which I think we have the link for, and B, when would they come to you in order to use your services to understand how to start using Clifton to make them better business people as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's many places to find me, but yeah, on Instagram, I'm at the Rosie Noel. So that's probably the best place to find me. You can also go to my website. My website's more built for my corporate audience, but it's rosienoel.com. And that on my website is where you would order the the Clifton Strengths assessment if you wanted to take it. And if you're not sure, like, I don't want to spend $60 on assessment, there's a $25 like assessment that just gives you your top 5. I'd always say though, if you're interested, just get the full report, because to upgrade it's more expensive. And so just do it. It's like a more complete data set. As somebody who loves data, I always want a full data set. And then yes, what I would say for people is just start with the assessment, take the full Clifton Strengths 34 assessment, and then read the report. And if you read it, and read it a couple times, like read it one time, have your spouse or partner read it, like, and there'll be things where you're like, this isn't true. And they're going to read it. They'll be like, this is absolutely true. Here's where you do it. And so it will help you so share it with somebody else. And then if you're intrigued and you're like, okay, yes, I'm starting to understand these things. I'm reading some of these ways that I can move it into action, but I just need help understanding it at a deeper level, or understanding it, how to apply it to my specific situation. That's when somebody would hire me to bring them in. If they just are like, Rosie, like I'm facing this issue. Can we just go deep into my strengths and help me understand how I can use my strengths to help me over this obstacle or around this problem that I'm having, or move faster toward this goal. It doesn't always have to be around a problem, but typically if you want to move faster, we got to move obstacles to help you move faster. And so whether it's just a single breakdown or working with people on an ongoing basis, Clifton Strengths is sort of like one of the key tools that I use to do that.
Yeah. A fun fact, we're getting ready to potentially do like a dating series to try to hack dating.
You're not the first person to say that. And I typically see, like, Daniel, you should have your wife take it. I typically see opposites. Like my husband and I are opposite. I would say 80% of the time people have like opposite complementary themes between them and their spouse. But there are couples, like there's no, I can't look at your dating profile and say like, oh, you would be great with blah, 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 blah. Like same thing. Like I get that question about partnerships. Like, well, tell me who I should partner with. And it's like, I can't tell you what they value. Right. And that's key to a partnership. I can tell you what their strengths are. I could tell you that you need to talk about some of these issues you might have based on what your strengths would tell me. But unfortunately, no, I will not be coming up with the Clifton Strengths dating app for these purposes.
Well, I'm just saying, maybe
one day, who knows?
Then guys, if you are interested in knowing anything about yourself, how to become the best version of yourself, or how to show the people that are around you that you're better than them, click the link in the chat and go and freaking order the assessment. It's $60. And this is really, really insightful, Rosie. It was not only was it great having you here, but I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this stuff, because the little thing I always say is who you are always shows up. And and whether it's showing up in ways that serve you or hurt you is really it's a matter of whether or not you pay attention and do something about it. And this helps you do that. So I'm super excited about this. I cannot wait to go through this all myself, because I'm a nerd, and then see what Yvonne says, because I already know we're 100% the opposite. And then yeah, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for confirming to Jonah that I'm smarter than him. Finally.
That's definitely what we got from this. 100%.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. I wish I truly could stay for so much longer and have more to say. And if you guys want, as a follow-up, send me a message. I can also put the two of you on like a team report together, so you can see your strengths like stacked up against each other. So send me a note if you want me to do that, and I will.
That would be cool. That would be super cool. And yeah, I would love to do any other follow-ups any other time we do this. Maybe we'll do another thing when we do the dating stuff. Maybe we'll get other people up here. But yeah, I think it'll be fun. Rosie, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, friends. Have a good rest of your day. Night.
All right.
Bye.
Good night. Bye. So cool. So here's what my entire thought process was going through that, of like how we could, if we want to keep going with the podcast and not end it, because she had to leave like earlier than when we usually end it. Should we just like try to interpret each other's reports in the most uncharitable way possible? Like, and like, damn, dude, you seem like such an asshole over that. Maybe that's why you said that to Gianmarco, and you keep being racist about him being Italian. Maybe you should become better. Or I don't know, or what do you want?
We can do that. The only problem is I don't actually know if I got my assessment. She got it before.
It should have been emailed to you. Right. I mean, it's true. It was nice how she had it like side by side, but I mean, I have mine. I'm pretty sure they emailed it to you. You might have, I know you did it like literally right before the podcast, but I've had mine up. So I don't know. I guess I think that's a funny way to just keep going with the podcast without Rosie. I don't know. What do you think?
Hold on. Hey, Rosie.
You should get an email with it.
Forward me.
Because like we still don't know what a lot of these mean. Like they don't explain a lot of these in the report, so we just have to like make it up. You know, it's just funny.
I'm down to make it up. Hold on.
Because that's just hilarious.
Okay, we're doing this. Sorry, guys. We're gonna get the thing. Okay, so one, bro.
That was great, though.
I apologize that I'm so much smarter than you, bro. I don't really apologize.
Give me the argument about our personality test made you think that you're smarter than me. I want to know. Like, even the bullshit argument.
My top 5 was really clear. And then, like, my top 12.
What do you mean? What about your fucking top 5 was any better than my top 5? What are you fucking talking about, dude? Strategic is in my top 5. That's a smart one. What else? What are you trying to say?
Strategic was my number 1, Poppy.
Just because it's your number 1, that's the difference, dude? That's crazy, bro. Dude, I feel like what are you?
Bro, we can just go through yours in case she happens to
not be able to get yours. Yeah, we could just go through mine. I mean, we can just go one by one and make fun of it, I guess. Yeah. So, all right. So, because I don't have these memorized is the fucking issue. So, like maximizer, you know, I'm always trying to make things better, you know, and trying to like get the most out of things, right? I don't really know how that would relate necessarily. Achiever, you know, whatever.
I guess this impacts let me ask you this, because you took this in the past, but I say this all the time on my coaching calls. Knowing something and doing something with it ain't the same thing. So it's really, really easy for you to get a result like this and be like, oh, that's interesting. And then go back about your business and just live your life the way you were living it. However, there's obviously value in taking information that you learn and then applying it. So you had mentioned, right, changes in business, things happen all the time. When you look at this, does this make you pause a little bit and say, all right, wait, hold on. Maybe I should actually start paying attention to these things and using them intentionally?
No, 100%, right? Like, I mean, literally, like we can apply this to the business situation I was talking about today, right? About my operations manager leaving. It totally makes sense remember how she was talking about how the self-assurance, and I don't remember which one, I think it was Achiever or Maximizer, right? How you can kind of run over people if you forget the empathy, right? And like, this is something this has been a constant challenge for me in business and managing people, is making sure my self-assurance doesn't like override people's feelings, right? Because I want to get stuff done. I'm a number 1 maximizer. I'm trying to make everybody excellent quality as much as I possibly can. And so that leads to me pushing people. But if you push people too hard without taking a moment to like appreciate them and have their feelings, which I feel like I do a decent job of, but sometimes I forget, right? People want to hop off the train because they're like, this is way too intense for me, right? Like, I can't handle this right now, right? Like, Jonah is going way too hard right now. I feel like he doesn't give a shit. I feel like all he cares about are the results, right? Even if that's not the case, right? And I do really care about the people, right? So I already see, just from knowing this, like, I already see how it's showing up in a lot in how I do my business, right? I think this is hard. Like the way that Rosie made it sound, it's kind of hard to tell how it comes up as much into belief systems that much. But in terms of business, I see all of this. And like, I see the potential good stuff, right? Obviously, I think a lot of the maximizer and achiever is why I'm successful in business, and especially the focus. I think most people don't focus. Like that one comes to me back in like, for the past 5 years, I've been trying to create a $2 to $3 to $5 million wholesaling company, right? With the same strategy. Well, like a lot of people jump strategies constantly, but I've been doing the same thing over and over again and just trying to get way, way better until we hit the goal, right? So I definitely see how it outlines into my strengths, right? We didn't get that much into my weaknesses, but like it would be, I guess, like if this was more about business and not about our politics and stuff, would be interesting to be like, how can we use this to become better at business? I don't know how much this can change in terms of like politics and what we view about the universe, right? Like she was telling you, it doesn't really like change what you believe. It's just more like how you to
It
conclusions.
informs what
Yeah.
you believe, right? Like for me, here's what's interesting, right? Here's what's interesting to me about this. It's that while we have these conversations about our differences in politics or beliefs or faith or any of these different things, it's easy when you're having a conversation about something like politics or like religion or like faith to assume that their belief, which differs than you, is an indictment against their intelligence.
Right.
Right? Oh, you're dumb. How can you believe that? You're not really a thoughtful person. How can you believe that? Bro, have you thought about what you believe? How can you believe that? And so if we're talking about us, this has been a conversation that we've had. Like we've talked about this publicly, we talked about this offline. It's like, bro, you can't just talk to somebody because they say something that you disagree with and then be dismissive, like, oh my God, you're a dumbass for even thinking that, right? Even in tone. And what's funny to me, or what's interesting to me about watching both of these things, is it confirms that both of us are very intentional in the way we make our decisions.
Right.
We're very intentional about it. We put a lot of thought into it. Yet, even with that level of intentionality, we still come to drastically different conclusions when it comes to things. So what does that tell me? Well, what that tells me is this, is that one, it gives credence to respecting the other person's perspective, right? Because I feel like I inherently, based on what these things tell us about ourselves, we deserve to respect the other people's perspective, because at least I know you didn't just like
Right. You're definitely, respecting the other person's perspective, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you that I respect the perspective. I'm gonna respect it internally.
Respecting it. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right, Quijano?
I'm gonna tell you that I think you're smart. I'm not like I'm gonna think you're smart.
Right?
Sorry,
keep going.
But no, I think it's just like, okay, all right. So I think this person sounds dumb, but they're not dumb. So, all right, how'd they get here? They had to have gotten here from somewhere. Well, what are the next options? This is an intelligence issue, then it's something else. What is it? It's an influence issue. Are they being overly influenced? And this becomes a gap in their intelligence. Are they overly emotional, right? And this becomes a gap in their rationality. Is there something else? Maybe this isn't a them issue, this is a me issue. Maybe they're making a fucking point, and I'm just being too hard-headed to listen to their point because they're presenting it. I'm just not listening, right? So I think it's interesting. I think it informs how we process those things.
Yeah, no, I think it's all super interesting. I was like interested because I know a lot of our similarities, right? And why we work well together is like, and why a lot of people, why we're friends. Like I could guess that we would be both high self-assurance, high command, like high, a lot of the general things as well.
Yeah.
Like that's why I wish I kind of wish I also gotten a little bit more into our differences, because I think that would have clarified more of our like where we split, right? We did that a little bit with connectedness. Like you heard my explanation of spirituality, and she's like, yeah, that's that is not even close to the way that you view spirituality, probably, right? And like not like miles away of being like Jonah's like,
what think that there's a possibility greater than 50% chance that we live in a simulation. So there's also that.
True. But like the way that I feel it is through like a pragmatism of like logically, if you take like why I believe that is logically, if we're able to make simulations as real as life, then why in the world would we be based reality? Like I feel like logically that would make it where it's I'm coming in from like more, I don't know if logical is right, like just more pragmatic, I'll use Rosie's word for it, than like I just have this, and you can describe the connectedness. Like I don't think Rosie had the word. She was saying that like you might be able to explain it better potentially, even though you don't know it necessarily. Like she was saying people who have it are more able to explain it. Because I don't know if it's just like a feeling or if it's more than that. I don't know if you feel like.
I'll tell you, like for me spiritually, I'll tell you kind of like to summarize. When I was getting out of the military, I was 19, 20 years old, something like that, 20. And I started having very, very weird spiritual situations. Like, I think I've mentioned this. Like one time we were all in Yorktown, Virginia. We went there for Halloween. Midnight on Halloween, we went to some old haunted bridge in Yorktown, right? And so I'm 20 years old, right? So what do 20-year-olds do at midnight on Halloween, right? Stupid shit. So we're out there and there's a bunch of us, maybe 10 of us. We're like 2-3 cars deep. We all go out to this thing. Have you ever been to Virginia, like through that part of the world?
I have been to DC and then mostly the areas around DC and Virginia.
That's the better part. Where I was in Virginia is not as great, my opinion. I think Northern Virginia is a much nicer place. Norfolk, I hated with my soul. In any case, but Yorktown's a little bit north, I believe. West, north, something like that. And so you go out there, we're driving through the trees like 20, 30 minutes or whatever. We get out to this
area. I love Virginia.
Yeah, and so we get out of the cars and we just parked on the road because there was nobody out there. We were out in the sticks. So we just literally parked in the middle of the street, got out and had to like go over to the side and climbed up on this bridge that no, I didn't. That's Jonah's job, by the way. I just hired him on. He's my official lotion.
You tell me that they wanted to rub lotion on your back, DQ. They might have wanted to.
They might have. Jonah actually applied for the position of lotion applier for me.
To you?
Yeah, I gave him the job because you got delicate hands. So,
all right, rock climbing hands. I don't know if you want that.
Crystal, it was 2002.
1920.
It was Halloween of 2002 when it was.
Right at the end of World War I.
Go fuck yourself. How old were you on Halloween of 2002?
7. I was 7 years old.
Jesus, dude, you're a child. Crystal, how
old were you
on Halloween of 2002? So, anyways, Halloween 2002. I'm out there, so we get out the cars. We left them on because it was pitch black. So we have the lights on. We walk like around the thing and kind of climb up the hill to get to the top of this old bridge that was from like the Civil War, right? It's an old bridge. So we're standing on top of this thing, and there's maybe 3 or 4 other people up there. And I felt 2 hands push me, like to push me off the bridge. So I caught myself, almost flipped over this thing, right? And I was pissed because I'm like, yo, you pushed me hard, bro. Like I almost just flipped. And I looked back to like say bad words to whoever pushed me. Nobody was behind me. Nobody. And in that 6-month window, all I can tell you, Jonah, I won't go into it, but I can't count how many weird things like that happened. I had roommates that I left town, and when I came back, they were like, dude, we were terrified to leave our room because your bedroom door was opening and closing the whole time you were gone. We could hear stuff going up and down the stairs. It was like weird stuff like that. That was just like, okay,
sure.
This is right. I didn't make up 2 hands push me, right? That wasn't in my head. And there was nobody in a place where they could have ran fast enough. Like they were too far away for that to be like nobody was out there. So it was like a bunch of weird stuff like that. And I could go into more, I won't, but a lot of stuff like that happened. And it was just this season of weird stuff. And then February 3rd, 2003, I woke up and I knew for a fact I needed to make a decision. And it was the weirdest thing ever. So it started for me based on that, right? When I changed my life.
That's like not even a personality test thing. Like I just have never had any of those experiences, right? Where it's like, I don't like if you've never had any of those experiences, it's just going to be very different for that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting part of it. Before that, I always kind of had a faith. As a whole conversation, Crystal. I think before that, I always kind of just had this belief that God was real. I just kind of knew, right? It was just this, I just kind of know. I didn't know why. I didn't really have any foundational belief. Maybe my mom wasn't really Christian by any state. Like she believed in God too. But yeah, and then after that, but what happened was because of the severity of the spiritual encounters in my life, I blindly leapt into Christianity and faith. Handful of years in, my intellect started contradicting my experiences, and I'm like, stuff's not adding up. I need to figure this out. So either all of this stuff is nonsense and it's BS, or we're just doing it wrong and we don't properly understand it. And so that was when I went on that journey of research. So for me, it was an inherent knowing that turned into a set of experiences, which I knew for a fact that was confirmation of knowing, which became question, and then it became intentional. where I put my brain into confirming whether or not there was any logical validation for what I always knew, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, like, it's just interesting, right? Like, I can't, like, to get into the personality part of that. Because, I mean, there's nothing about your personality that had someone push you, right? Or a spirit, whatever that you think that is, right? Like, I can't, that's not a personality thing, right? Maybe your feeling of like their God exists, because that's just a feeling. I don't know if that's related to the connectedness, right? But yeah, like I'm more like I wish we like I feel like maybe if we had more time with her, it would have been interesting to go into like our differences a little bit more. In the sense of like here's another one. Like I think, do you have yours up or no?
I didn't get it.
This fucking guy, dude. I think individualization was at least a middle one for you. I don't know if it was your top 10, but like this was an interesting one because this is my last one. This is my quote unquote weakest, right? Okay. And I think it's something, and I think I don't know if it relates to this. I'll read it what it says mine.
You're not sharing.
No, I know I'm not. Do you want me to? I can't share it.
Oh, wait, hold on. I just logged back in. I didn't know I could log in. Hold on. Maybe I can just download this thing. Yeah. View my Clifton strengths.
Because like I don't know if I'm curious if StreamYard can have us put it side by side or not. I don't know. Because she had it on 2 different tabs.
Okay, I'm gonna send you mine. Can I send this? I'm gonna send it to you.
Sure.
But don't.
Yeah, you can send it to me.
Don't share it with other people. It's very proprietary, bro. View my reports. 34 report. How do I download it, bro?
Like there are interesting things about this, right? Like the one that I think surprised you, right? Like one of them where you're like, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with this, or I like not something that would naturally be for you is like woo, right? That was like one where you're like, oh, I thought that would naturally be yours. One of mine that's not on here, right? Or that's pretty low is communication, right? Which I usually feel like I'm a pretty good communicator, right? So it's also like interesting to see which ones, like, even though we think we are those, like maybe that's not exactly what it is, right? And I sort of like I think I'm good at communicating, but sometimes I stumble over my words, right? I'm pretty good at presenting, but I don't know. Like it's like interesting in that sense. So maybe the next thing we do, because like I feel like you and I are just guessing, is maybe we read. She said that like if we read the breakdown, there's like specific breakdowns of our top 5 for us, right? Curious if like we can read those as well. Did you said you sent me yours?
It's in the chat. It's in the WhatsApp chat.
Hold on, I gotta open up WhatsApp then. So
yeah, no, this stuff is super interesting. I just think that like we go through our lives. Here's what's crazy, and this is kind of like a mini passion project for me. I don't know if it'll actually become a project, but at least in my head it is right now. I just want people to understand themselves. Like we just live in this weird, like Shauna talked about it, like NPC-esque world where people just kind of like float through life, right? Your parents, were raising you when they were in their 20s and they didn't know shit, because anybody who's gotten out of their 20s realizes you don't know anything when you're in your 20s, right? And then so you're being taught things by people who they don't even know what the hell they're doing, right? Which is fine. That's normal. That's life. And then you go to a school system that's not in any way created to encourage individuality or extract the personal greatness that lies within you. And so we just kind of go through life just going through these motions, like this assembly line. Like life, at least in the US, it's just like this assembly line. Go to school. Okay, now you get out and I get a job. Okay, but who am I? Like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What is this all about? And I feel like these are important questions. And I don't know why we're not encouraged. Like, do you agree that those are important questions, Jonah?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like, I mean, like for me at least, I think one of the greatest reasons why I'm successful in business is a lot of this I already knew kind of intuitively. Yeah. Like when I heard about real estate, right? And I heard about wholesaling, I'm like, oh, I would crush that business. It's all just being able to build a relationship and sales, which A, I know from the past, and B, like I'm just like, I just know I'm going to crush that one, right? I understand certain things about me that I know like that would be an incredible business model for me, right? Because I don't need to worry about things like analytics. I don't know if that's really what analytical comes down to, or as much, right? Especially at the beginning, right? I've now hired people to like help me with the parts that I'm not as good at, but no, I think it's super important to understand who you are so you can apply yourself. Like how she was saying it was like the most important thing to use these on is to understand these and then use it to help you achieve the goals that you want and like do it in the way of like whatever your top 10 are, right?
Yeah, so Shauna,
no,
Shauna, what we were doing is the Clifton Strengths. I don't know if you were here for any of what Rosie was doing, but she was walking us through. So this is her Clifton Strengths test. We threw the link in the chat. And she was basically, I did mine this afternoon before the podcast. Jonah is in Vina's mastermind group for Multify. And so he learned that. He did this there. And so she was just walking through the findings. Super, super cool conversation. And so now what Jonah's doing is going by and explaining why I'm better than him as a person in general. That's what he's explaining.
Very funny, very funny.
No, he actually said no, they will usually not change. She said that if you do like a disc will usually change. This usually does not change. So
it's not supposed to change.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't really like this is a lot fucking easier with Rosie here, to be honest. Because I'm like looking at this.
What the hell we're doing?
What?
Go up to the top. Go up to the very top. Let's just look at the.
You just want to compare them?
Yeah.
So I mean, like again, like we were talking about earlier, like I mean, we have a lot similar. We have the strategic. We have. I don't have belief as much, but it's in there, right? This was input is also an interesting one, right? I think that's like an interesting one in the sense of you're a higher learner by a little bit, right? I totally see that in our differences, right? I feel like, and you should tell me if you think I'm wrong.
11 learner, and yours is where?
My learner is 16. My input is 7, and your input is like around here, right?
Okay.
Because this is I definitely like learning information for a purpose, right? How she said, like, learner is to like potentially learn information. You just want to learn as much as possible, right? And like where I feel like that comes up when, like, you remember when we were talking about like you were just like, dude, I don't even feel like you're like as interested in the
various topics. Yeah.
The like the documentary and like the mysteries and the conspiracies. Because here's the thing with conspiracies in the end, in my opinion, it's like, what am I going to do with that? It's like, okay, the moon landing was fake. Okay, that's cool. But like, that's not really going to affect my life that much in the end. Like that's where it like, that's just how I personally feel. And I feel like you could see that in our.
It's so funny you bring that up. Like, it's so interesting that you bring that up because I don't know. 2009, I was in my ministry days. I was a part of this ministry, and there was a lady there, and she was actually, oddly enough, she was a coach. She is a coach right now. She's like a life coach though. Super dynamic lady, super smart lady. She was really successful in the insurance world at the time. She's now gone full-time coaching. It's funny because I wasn't a coach back then. It's funny how things full circle because it's been like, you know, however many years. But we were having these conversations outside of church one night. And well, yeah, he knows by proxy that the moon landing was fake. Vina also knows that the moon landing was fake. Just so you guys know, in case you guys weren't clear, there is a very quality declaration that was made on this shirt today. Vina was not here with us tonight. She was here with us last week, but I just want everybody to know Vina Jetty is a flat earther, right? And this shirt is proof of that fact. So now you guys know. Jonah, go back. What are you doing? Why'd you pull the thing off?
I just can't. Just realized I'm just staring at this while you're talking, so I can't see the comment.
No. So we can get this up. No. So here's what's funny, right? After I talk about Vina being a flat earther, you're saying you make a really good point. So we were talking about all this stuff then, and we were talking about it in a spiritual context. And she said the exact same thing that you just said. She was like, I hear you, but like, why do I care? Why do I care if some people are like secretly controlling the earth? And it's funny to me because in my head, my response to that is like, why wouldn't you care? Because let's say, I don't know, let's pick some random, I'm going to make something up so that way people don't think I'm trying
okay, so first off, people controlling the earth is a little bit different than whether the moon landing was fake. Unless you're saying that like, I guess that's your next point is that like, if it is fake, why would they lie about it?
Here's my point, right? So it depends on the topic for sure. To be honest with you, I don't necessarily disagree with your mindset because part of the reason, as much as we're joking around about flat earth, part of the reason why I never really jumped onto the flat earth train is because a big part of me is like, yeah, but who cares? Like, how does that impact me, whether it is or whether it is not? So I'm not really like, it doesn't really, I don't see the angle. But there are other things that I do see the angle. And understanding these things, while maybe we don't have the ability to change them, it does inform us that there is something else happening on this planet. And if this world that we live in isn't what we think it is, and here's my question to you, Jonah. If this world, what?
I also have a question for you, but keep going.
Okay. If this world that we live in is drastically different than what we've been told, does knowing that change how we approach life? My answer is, yeah, I think it should. So that tells me that being open to these weird, crazy ideas behooves me, it benefits me, it serves me, because it informs how I approach life. It informs how I engage with the world that I'm in, because I'm not naive. I'm not just, to quote Shauna, I'm not an NPC just walking around believing what I'm told, right? Even though I may not be able to do anything with that information, by changing it, I can change how I approach the world by knowing this information. Does that make sense? Do you agree?
No, totally. I get it from your perspective. What I'm curious about, because what I don't understand, this is my question to you, is why is flat Earth different than the moon landing in that sense? Like, if we're being lied to about the flat Earth, let's say, why isn't that just as interesting to you as the moon landing? Because in my head, those two things would naturally lead to kind of the same conclusion of the world's being controlled. Am I not, like, explain, I guess, the difference to me? Because in my head, it's like, oh, they're both lies, technically, then. And then it's, I don't know, like, explain it to me more, because that's not how I view it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you exactly. And again, I have not jumped onto the flat Earth train. I haven't, right? I feel
like, just jokingly, real quick for a second, the real reason I feel like is like, dude, then you're just fully tinfoil, you know? Like, full tinfoil hat. Like, if you know all about, like, there's nothing different. It's like that. The frogs are turning gay from the water, which I don't even know if you subscribe to that one or not.
That was actually, that's not a conspiracy. That was proven true. That was actually,
I believe it. No, like, it's just a funnier, I know nothing about it, but I actually did read something where it actually seemed like that one was true, where there was like some hormone or something put in there. I'm just saying that's a funny one. It's my point that I'm trying to make is, it's like, what, then you literally believe in all of them. Basically,
maybe unconscious.
Like, you're doing it, so you're like, okay, we need to at least seem somewhat balanced here. Flat Earth, who really gives a shit, you know?
Yes, Jess. So I apologize. If you were interested in dating a frog, you missed your window. Unless you want to date a lady frog, in which case you still got time. No. So Jonah, I think that's a good question. For me, I do think it's a little bit different, because and maybe it's not, like, I think this is, I'm not going to say why I think it is or isn't different. I'm just going to tell you what my brain processed it. And it probably doesn't even make sense now that I'm about to say it out loud. I don't really think it makes sense. I think in my head, knowing that the moon landing was fake is just interesting, because that tells us, okay, your government's lying to you. Why are they faking that? Okay, that just tells me that here's one of the many things that they're willing to lie to us about, right?
Okay.
Flat Earth is just so much more esoteric. So I don't really see the ramifications of that. I live in the country that lied about that. And if they're consistently lying about that, they've lied about other programs where they harmed people, from testing syphilis on the Black community to MK Ultra, where they were literally practicing mind control experiments that they got from Nazi scientists. Oh, by the way, NASA is also created by NASA scientists, right? So these things really inform me that there is a potentially nefarious group of people behind the scenes. Then you got people like JFK, which we will find out hopefully soon whether or not this is true. But we know that one of the final speeches that is known about John F. Kennedy Jr. is that he literally said that there is a secret cabal of people in the shadows controlling our country, and he wanted to do away with it. And then he died, right? And so it's just like, okay, there is something nefarious going on in our country, which what that tells me is that maybe I just be a little bit cautious. Maybe I'm a little bit careful with how I navigate, because maybe the powers that be aren't on my side. So when I first made that decision,
flat Earth is like just not that, because flat Earth is not as
that you got to. The globe is in cahoots with this. Every nation on the planet has to be in cahoots with this. That has the research capacity to go and confirm this for themselves.
You don't think that every single, like most of the governments would have to be somewhat in cahoots with the America with the moon landing also?
No, I don't. Because
there is a high like I'm just hear me out. Just tell me if you agree with my logic or not. Like, for instance, like the Soviet Union, like all these people were competing with us to get to the moon quicker, right? If it was fake, wouldn't like the Soviet Union have such a benefit to be like, no, you guys are fucking liars?
And that's a great point. They have a huge vested interest in saying, nah, fam, you didn't go. The reason you beat us is because you didn't actually go. I don't know what they get from that, right? Putin has been on record, right? Who is now in charge of what we now know to be Russia, which used to be the Soviet Union. Okay, well, he's said many, many times. There's actually a recording. He says, yeah, presidents think they're in charge until they get into power. And then the people with the black suits come and tell them how the world really operates. So Putin also knows. So what does that mean? What's the implication of that? I don't know. But I will tell you something interesting. And I wish I could find this thing. I don't know what this means. I'm not saying this means anything, right? Because I'm still not on the flat Earth train. But I watched this video.
I feel like I'm gonna watch you throughout this entire podcast, just eventually just like convert to flat Earth and be like, I'm on it, guys. It's official. I'm a flat earther, baby.
No, bro. If I end up, what happened? Mentioned it. Yeah, my mom is not. My mom, just to be clear, my mom is probably far more your world than mine. Like, there is zero conversation about these topics with my mother. It will not go well.
Okay.
But here's what's funny. So, just to be clear, Jonah, I'm a sidetrack. It's been a long day. My brain's all over the place. If I go flat Earth, homie, I'm bringing you with me. I'm gonna do everything in my power to drag you with
specifically
me.
that one? Why specifically that one? Like, just fucking cuz.
Get you on flat Earth.
I feel like there are conspiracies you believe in that are much more relevant than the flat Earth one. Like, I do understand your point in terms of like I don't know, like I definitely think it's much more important to know whether a secret cabal of people run the entire world than whether the Earth is flat. I just found it interesting how you think, because like in my head, the moon landing being faked isn't really as related to like a cabal of people being it. Like in my head, like even if the moon landing, let's just say I fully accept it was faked, that could just be like the government doing it because they want to win the space race, and there's nothing like crazy about that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, while other things like MK Ultra or like you know, like what we already talked about, like the syphilis being spread in Black communities, right? Those are more damning in and of themselves, and those aren't even conspiracies. Those are like proven facts. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are more damning than like the moon landing be fake for what you care about.
That for me, and that's exactly why. But here's the thing: for me, I categorize this in the same category. This is just me having spatial awareness to the environment of the world that I live in, and saying, all right, well, this informs me of who I'm dealing with. You know what I mean? If you're going to be working in business and you go to a meetup and you meet a bunch of people and this person is on the list of somebody that you may consider doing business with, well, it would
you better fucking not.
Better run.
Because he's probably a huge pussy.
No, he's bald. He's bald. According to Vina, vaginas are stronger than
balls. Whatever. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, definitely don't.
And that's as far as Quijano thinks about it. Are you like that's it? You know, you know what I mean?
You want to know what's interesting? There is there's been a couple of interesting things about about flat Earth that I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. One, and I wish I could find a video to show it, but you are not familiar with this, I don't think. We've talked about it as it relates to the fire. Are you familiar at all with frequencies, vibrations, cymatics, anything like that?
Tiny bit. I know little things. Like I know, like I'm very unknowledgeable. Not much.
Okay. So I will say this: did you get? Let's bring this back to that documentary. Did you get to the Star Forts section?
No. After like the first 2 hours, I basically stopped.
Okay.
More or less, I more or less only kept watching it for when I knew we were after the podcast. I was like,
yeah, no, I get it. So if you look at Star Forts, do you know what Star Forts are?
I know what a Star Fort is. Yeah, it's like a Renaissance fort that they built in order to protect places. It's a type of fort.
I'm gonna see if I can pull this up. So here, let me see if I can do this. Okay, this is perfect. Let me see if I can just get a side-by-side image of this. This is absolutely perfect. Okay, so here's what we know about Star Forts, right?
You're not sharing your screen, unless you want to. Like I just don't know. Like I'm not sure if you want to share your screen or not.
I do. So here is a Star Fort, right?
you still aren't sharing your screen.
I'm coming. Okay.
Just making sure.
I'm on my way. Said I'm on my way. All right. So this is a Star Fort. For anybody who doesn't know what a Star Fort is, right? They're these extremely elaborate forts that were built, right? The that documentary that we were watching that night, on the list of things that this guy said was BS that humans didn't build, it was built in a different fashion, are Star Forts. He says, no, there's no way that humans built these Star Forts. Why? Because the mathematical precision that would have been required to accomplish this successfully would have required so many more materials and tools that they just didn't have available at the time that they claimed that they built them. They didn't have any ability to look over from above, blah, blah, blah. Whatever his belief is, he doesn't believe that. And when you look at this, I'm going to be honest with you, combining the trees and all of the different things, this is freaking impressive, right? Here's what's interesting. Here's what's interesting, though. Check this out.
It looks like Bowser's Castle.
It does look like,
you know what I mean? It's like it looks like straight out of Mario Kart or Mario. Super Mario.
Look at this. This is actually much more interesting because when you look at cymatics and you compare cymatics to a Star Fort, now you start having a different conversation. Or if you compare frequencies or vibrations as it relates to water when it converts into a snow crystal versus Star Forts, well, now you're looking at this from a different perspective, right? And what you do is when you look at cymatics or anything frequency-based or anything, when you look at Fibonacci or any of those types of mathematical things, what you notice is that many of the intricacies in these big buildings actually come from this. Well, what's cymatics? Cymatics is when you take and you just play a frequency and you put sand on a plate and that sand turns into a shape. Have you seen that happen?
I've seen it happen.
Okay.
I didn't know the word for it, but I've seen that happen.
That's what it's called. It's called cymatics. So essentially what they're saying is the implication is this. The implication is that cymatics is the use of frequencies to create shapes out of actual material objects. Sand is a material object. And that material object went and created a geometric shape all because of frequencies. Nothing touched it but frequency and vibration, right? So by itself, to see sand do that is extremely interesting, right? So what's the implication? Tesla says, if you want to understand the Earth, look at it in terms of, I believe it's something, frequency, and vibration. Are you familiar with that quote from Tesla?
No.
Everything on this Earth, I'll look up the quote. Hold on.
Everything is like vibrations and frequency. I understand scientifically what he means. Like, yes, that is true. Because all matter is just, all it is atoms vibrating, basically.
Okay. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Sure.
So that's a very compelling claim to make. If you want to understand the secrets of the earth, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Well, cymatics are a tangible manifestation of exactly that. That's frequency and vibration. So what you do is you take an actual like material like sand and you apply frequency and it creates something. So this guy's implying that star forts weren't created by building materials like we know today. They were created by a larger scale version of cymatics. Okay, cool.
Like he made the world like the ground vibrate, and that was created.
And that's, I think, maybe the implication.
That is I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that's the claim. He doesn't give the mechanics of how that was done, but I believe that's the claim. I think it's an interesting claim. Why? Because the shape of the star forts, they just happen to choose almost every single star fort is in the shape identical to the way sand forms when you use cymatic frequencies. That is interesting. Of all the shapes they could have chosen, how did they know to choose shapes that would 100% manifest if you use cymatics?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know much about it. Isn't the frequency something like, well, I don't know. That's not my door. Sorry. Somebody's knocking.
That's
on
very
something.
loud. I could hear that.
Like it's very weird. It's like it's not on my door. Somebody's like hammering something in the next door. Sorry, I'm getting distracted.
And this is step one in your conversion.
Yeah, I know. It would be way louder if it was knocking. But okay, so depending on the frequency, can't you make different shapes in sand?
Yep. And that's how they do it. 100%.
So why is the star frequency so much more? Okay. So then I guess my question, do you get where I'm going with this? Is like, why are we connecting these two things?
Because let's go, let's do this. Let's see this.
Like if the only shape was a star that could be made in sand, that would be more interesting. But it's like you could make like tons of different shapes in sand, from what I know. Dude, somebody's like hammering something into upstairs or something. I don't know, but keep going.
So you see this?
Yes.
If you did cymatics, so these are all variations of this, but if you did cymatics, the implication, the claim is that cymatics all turn into frequency shapes very similar to this, right? So essentially, if I took some sand and put it on a plate and came up with a bunch of different shapes, the shapes would look like akin to these.
Okay.
How did they know?
Like it's not like every single shape is made with sand vibrations. It's like always somewhat star shaped.
No, it's not that they're always somewhat star shaped. It's that all of the star fort shapes are very similar to shapes that can be made using cymatics. So then the question is, how did they know, what is the likelihood of the coincidence? What's the coincidence, the level of likelihood that they could create these things and mirror what cymatics would look like? So I don't know what that means, but here's the point. Why did I even get into all of this? That's just interesting. Okay. I don't know enough about this to be able to make any claim. I thought it was interesting, but here's what I thought. This goes back to the flat earth thing. There's this mystery surrounding bells. There was a season where there were bells all over the planet and all of them got broken. Have you heard about this?
Never heard about it in my life.
Look into it. There was this season where there was a period on Earth. I don't remember the time. I'm going to butcher this. So if somebody knows better, feel free to correct me. But it was in like the 1800s, 1700s, somewhere between let's call it the 16 and 1900s. There were bells everywhere, gigantic bells everywhere. They were common. They were common in city squares. They were common in churches. They were everywhere, right? For whatever reason, somebody started going around and breaking all of the bells. This is why the Liberty Bell is one example. All of these bells started getting broken. They did. And everybody's like, why though? Why? I saw this video, and I cannot find it for the life of me, that presented a claim that I thought was really interesting. basically they were saying, look at what a bell does. What does a bell do scientifically? A bell vibrates at a specific frequency.
Sure.
That's all it does. That frequency creates a sound. But when you understand vibration and frequency, you understand that sound frequencies can also create things. They can move things. It's been believed by many and espoused by some scientists that that's actually how the pyramids were made, that they just used frequency and moved the freaking rocks. Because when you have a strong enough frequency, it can lift anything. Weight's irrelevant, right? And so it's been espoused by some that that's how they moved the pyramids and that's how that was built. Okay, cool. We don't know. But when you understand that the vibrational power that comes from a bell actually can have many other ramifications. It can create things, it can move things, it can heal things. Sound frequency has been used in healing for a long time. And it was very popular in the early 1900s. It went away. And now it's coming back to be a little bit more popular via things like PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency, right? There is tons of documented cases of PEMF and PEMF devices healing people, reversing inflammation, right? And this is just at a small application. I'm assuming you're familiar with that, yeah?
Yeah, I know like how you can actually use sound to do a lot of crazy things. I mean, sonar, like you can use it to I remember like Jamil had like someone come in with like these sound, I don't know what the fuck they're called, like sound bowls.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. And I had a weird ass experience when they did that. She swore she didn't walk. I mean, I didn't open my eyes, so I really part of me really wishes I opened my eyes. But I swear to God, she was in front of us and the sound started coming behind me. And I'm like, how the fuck is that happening? Right? Like, I really wish I'd opened my eyes because now I'll never know. But just in case she was lying, but it wouldn't have made, these things were huge. So it wouldn't have made sense that she would just like pick one up and just be like, or whatever. Yeah. But
here's the thing. Like, I love that you have that experience because it just opens up your mind to the possibilities. What that right there, let's assume she didn't go behind you. A little fucking bowl that was in her hand that she could carry into a building had the power to accomplish that. Well, right. Imagine if you're doing it at scale and you have different shapes and different dimensions and all of them accomplish a different thing. Why? Because every shape emits a different frequency. Every frequency creates different patterns. They have different impacts. They impact the body differently. So here's what I saw in this video. It was crazy because what they were saying is, look at the shape of every single bell. Look at the shape of every single one of those bowls. What do they have in common?
They're shaped pretty similar, right? It's like
they all are in a dome shape. They're in a dome shape. And they said part of the reason, and this was the only thing that I said, that's interesting. They said part of the reason that this is their claim, right? Vena's the flat earther, not me. But part of the reason they don't want us to know that the earth is a dome, because flat earthers believe that we're in a dome. It's not just like a pancake. There's a dome over the top called the firmament. Okay, cool. So they say part of the reason that they don't want us to know that we live in a dome is the same reason that they destroyed all the bells. Because one of the most powerful knowledges on this planet is the understanding of the knowledge of frequencies. When you can understand how to control frequencies, you can control this planet. And the ability to do that makes you completely neutral from needing to depend on anybody, because you don't need electricity anymore. You don't need, right, you can start creating a lot of your own stuff that make you independent, not dependent on a system. And so they said the reason, their claim was, the reason they don't want us to know that the earth is a dome is the same reason that they destroyed the bells, because if you understand that, then you'll start testing, scientists in school will start testing how to use the power of what you experience with those balls at the scale of the entire planet. And the whole earth gets changed. That's how we used to operate, which is why we have so many of these cool things, because they operated at that level. And now we don't know how to tap into it because we don't even know to look, because we don't realize that that's the shape that we're in. That was one of the biggest bars that made me say, oh shit, that's actually a good point. That is compelling.
Maybe. I don't know. How did any of that relate to the personalities? Or where did we get from that?
You were talking to me about flat Earth, and then you were talking about like how we could believe it, and you were asking me why I believe what.
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, yeah, like it's just interesting. Like I find all of that stuff interesting, but like it's like do you feel like we could ever know whether that's true or not? Like actually know?
Define we.
Like anyone, you, me, anybody, know that's the reason the bells are broken, or like?
I think there are people that know. I think there are 100% people on this planet that know. I just don't think I look at it.
How do they know? Because they have access to like documents in the government, or like what do you think?
Here's the thing. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that there's a bunch of shit that exists on this planet that the government knows of that they will never tell us? They have no intention of ever telling us.
Sure.
Okay, so we both agree that that's possible. Okay, so
it's also that it's not just that it's possible. That one I believe is happening.
Okay, we know that the government knows a lot of shit. We're talking about an enterprise with hundreds of years of experience, with unlimited resources, right? Okay, cool. Then you're gonna know some shit. So now the question isn't that do they know? The question is like, what is it that they're hiding? That's what we disagree on. What is it that they're hiding? Well, I think that let's assume that we're living in the world where there's a bunch of weird supernatural spiritual shit that exists, and for whatever reason they don't want us to know. I think that there's probably segments. Have you ever heard of Art Bell? It was an old. It's. I think it may still be around. Anybody ever heard of Coast to Coast? It's called Coast to Coast AM, I think. It's a radio show that's been around for 50 years. The guy that started it, I believe, is named Art Bell. And it was just like one of the original conspiracy things. But he would bring on guests all the time, right? Think, what's his name? What's the crazy dude, the Gay Frogs guy? Alex Jones, but normal, right? He was just an elderly guy, spoke normal, just a normal dude. Hey, here's what we're listening. We have this person.
About it.
What's that?
Like just way chiller, you mean? Like not just screaming
like a normal guy. And he was like, look, guys, this is what we have, but what they would bring on. Now, let's assume we don't know whether or not this person's telling the truth. I have no idea. But he would bring on all of these people who were former special forces, former CIA, people who've deflected, people who are whistleblowers. He would have guests all the time. I remember, and I've looked for this video. I remember one time he had this guest on, and let's just flip a coin. Maybe he's full of crap. Maybe this is true. I have no idea. He had this one guy on who was a former special forces commander of sorts. I don't know if he was a Navy SEAL or not. And he was saying, no, not David Icke. That guy's on some other stuff. My opinion. So this guy, this guy was a special forces commander. When you're listening to this, it's very believable. They present as they don't sound incredible. And so he's on there and he's talking about the different things that he's done. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. He's like, when he tells his story, he went through special forces, and then he gets recruited to this special team. And he said, here's what's interesting, and this is what people don't know. He said, you guys don't realize the majority of the stuff that you see in real life that has been presented as fun or as something, it's real. They're all based on real things. So the Men in Black are real. They're a very real program. The Men in Black are 100% a real program. They've been a real program, and this guy had dates. He said it was started by this person. This is what they did. And he said, but the Men in Black weren't just responsible for dealing with aliens and extraterrestrials. They were also responsible for dealing with interdimensional beings. And so he starts talking about these portals, right? Where there's portals on the earth. They call them Stargates. You ever heard of Stargate? There was a TV show called Stargate. There's been movies about it. These Stargates are actually, if you look at the TV show, which was popular in the early 2000s, it actually, the Stargates that they have in the TV show, there's actually old ancient ruins with Stargates built out of stone. And so what he says is, yeah, guys, just so you know, this is this guy, the special forces guy. And I'm going to butcher his story, but he says, yeah, so I get recruited It wasn't like it wasn't Men in Black, but it was similar to Men in Black. And it was a special forces elite program where our job was to 100% not defend against terrorists, but to defend against supernatural threats that exist on this planet. Trust me, they exist. They have existed forever. And there are special forces programs that are 100% responsible for this. Men in Black is one of them. And so he's telling this story, and he said that the first time that I went, he's like, you want to see the strongest, most elite men on the planet collapse at your feet? Watch them go through one of these portals. He said one of the training programs is you go through and you have to go through the portal, and then you come back from the portal. Well, when you're in that portal, you're in another dimension. You're in a whole other world where there's other things that exist, right? And so, long story short, this is just this show. If you find old clippings of this show, you'll find all of these different things. There's all this different stuff. I don't know if this is true, Jonah, but here's the thing. If that's true, I guarantee you there's all kinds of people in the government that know about this stuff. This stuff's real stuff. This is impacting real life. That for me is interesting, because what else is going on out here that we could be aware of, and we're just not. That for me is interesting. I don't know.
I get it. It's interesting. It's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, but like I'll never know if that guy's telling the truth or not, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have photos of him doing it, right? And it's like I do find it interesting if like I'm just bored and like I want to watch a really weird YouTube video. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Anyways, I think circling all the way back, I think like that's where like the personality thing comes in, where it's like, oh, like that's just one thing that she mentioned that I thought was cool. So I don't know if you want to go back to the personality thing or not.
We can do that. Yeah, I think that's interesting, right? Like so let me ask you this, because we jumped off in these rabbit trails talking about these things.
Sure.
Do you think that makes it interesting then? Like, do you see how those things could impact you? Is it just not big enough to grab your attention?
Well, it's just like the issue is I will never know if that guy is telling the truth or not, right? Is this guy just lying to get a fame on a radio show? Maybe the guy paid. Like, I just don't know. You know what I mean? So to the point where, like, since I'll never know, because I'm not planning on joining the military and like becoming part of the government and finding out if they are Stargates or whatever the fuck, right? Where it's just kind of like it's cool and it's interesting, but there's a certain point where it's like, I'm never going to look, just realistically, I'm not going to like invade the government or become part of the government and ever actually know. 2, like, I'll never know if this guy is lying. And in the end, like in my daily life, it's just not going to affect it, because even if there are Stargates, it's just not. Like, I'm not, like, it'd just be like that would be crazy to actually know the truth on that. That would blow my mind. And it would be fascinating if like if like you were like, here's the difference. If you, Kiana, were like, bro, I got the hookup, I'm going to show you a Stargate. That would be fucking insane, right? Because I'd be like, what, right? But like, just hearing some guy on the radio, it's like, I just don't know if this guy's lying for a moment of fame. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this, because now, after seeing this actually makes a lot of sense to me. This helps me to inform this, because I hear that and I'm like, holy shit, that's interesting. I need to know this, because if this is possible to be true, I want to know, because I just want to know things. I just want to know. And I'm not scared how silly it sounds to other people. You can believe whatever you want. I'm going to avail myself to information, regardless of how outlandish that information may seem to you or anybody else, right? For me, I think it's silly to think that your naive perspective on the world, which, to be clear, we are all naive in many, many areas, because there is just so much about this vast world that we don't understand, all of us collectively and individually, right? And so for me, I look at it's almost naive arrogance to believe that you think you're qualified to call a outlandish idea silly. Like, you sound silly right now. The vastness of what you don't know greatly overshadows what you do know on this planet, period, right? So when someone presents to you an outlandish idea, where's the harm in just saying, interesting, that sounds crazy to me, but why not learn something new? Like, for me, that excites me. For people who are closed-minded, I don't understand that. I don't think that's a reflection of intelligence. But now that we took this assessment, I understand why you don't open yourself up to it, because you just don't care. You just don't see its prevalence.
Depends what it is. in my opinion. Well, no. It's not just that I don't care, Keanu. It's also that how could you ever know? Like you said, like you find it interesting because I want to know. For me, my issue is how could I ever know if that guy's telling the truth or not, right?
How could you ever know that the girl that you're going to date is going to be faithful to you, right? Knowing is, how do you know that you're going to make money in your business? How do you know that you're going to succeed as an entrepreneur? It's funny that we make
those things are in my control. Everything you just listed is in my control, though. That one, the one you listed, the earlier one, that I can't control. I'm never going to be able to talk to this guy. I'm never going to be able to go to a military facility. I control the girl. I don't control the date. I choose the girl. I don't control her.
Control the girl that you're going to date. No, that's cool.
I choose the girl that I date, right? And like, that affects me intimately, right? And that also, like, what visit, whether I go to business, that affects me intimately. Those are like very these are things I feel like I can kind of know by like talking to them, having experience with them, stuff like that. I'm talking about like just something like that. Like, it's cool. And if I'm like bored on a Sunday, I might like listen just fucking cuz, but it just doesn't naturally interest me if it's not something I can like actually know in the end. You know what I mean?
I get that.
It's different. It's not that I like, if you like, if you came to me, Keanu, and were like, Jonah, I got the hookup with Trump. He's been watching the podcast. He wants to invite us to the Stargate. Are you ready to go? I would be like, abso-fucking-lutely. Now I'm intrigued beyond, like, you get what I mean? Like my level of interest would go way more into
that. That all makes perfect sense to me. And it's so cool how once you understand people, it changes your perspective on things, right? But here's my question to you, right? Outside of me getting the plug, Trump calling me up and be like, yo, grab the homies. We've been hit a portal.
We're going to the Stargate.
But
I like what you've been saying.
What happens? Like, I'm genuinely curious about this. If I have 11 gigabytes on the oh Jesus Christ, Peter, that actually tracks for me, bro. That I feel like Jamarco would lose his lineup.
That was a long one.
So, Jonah, here's my question, and I'm genuinely curious about this. Right? Obviously, getting a call from Trump about a portal is probably on the loftier side of
yeah, I mean, that would be crazy, of course,
but let's just say, real talk, tomorrow you wake up and you see an angel standing in your living room and he takes you to another dimension and then brings you back and leaves you there, like something random like that, whatever, pick your random event that, but you know everything you thought you know about existence just got destroyed. No question. You don't have any peer-reviewed data or any of that stuff, right?
Your bullshit science. Like, fuck your shit. You got picked up by an angel, dumbass. Going, okay.
And you know, like, you have vetted this in your rational mind. Like, nah, there is no scenario.
I get it. Like, this happened. I got it.
What do you? How does your brain?
What would I do?
This, like, what happens?
What would I do if I did that? I would probably immediately start doing a way more fucking research and being like, what the fuck was that? Right? I would probably reach out to people who've had experiences like that before, try to understand the experience, be like, what is this? Like, because there's only some certain possibilities, right? One is 100% real, and I need to explore that as a possibility because I just had a crazy experience. Two, is something wrong with my brain, right? Like, am I tripping out, right? That I just had all of a sudden this crazy experience. I got to explore that option as well, right? Because that's a possibility.
Got high on DMT.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe like maybe you drugged me, you know? Maybe you came to my house, slipped some acid in. You know what I mean?
I'm not above it, bro. I'm going to be honest with you.
I feel like you're like, yo, you want to experience God, motherfucker? Just drop that in there. You know, like, it's possible. I'm just saying it's possible. What I'd obviously be way more interested because that's like an intimate thing that I experienced, right? But me hearing someone else having that experience, it's like, it's cool. And like, I'm going to take what you say with a grain of salt, and I'll be like, look, like I can't disprove you. That was your experience. But because it didn't happen to me, like, what am I supposed to say to that? It's like,
does this change, like, because in my
it would
opinion,
obviously change it a lot if I personally experienced it versus
does
hearing
this
it about
change how you approach the earth? Like, is everything now? Because, and here's why, right? And hear me out, because I've listened to many stories of people who have had experiences like that. I have never been scooped up by an angel, right? To my recollection. But I have heard stories of people who have, right?
Sure.
And you can tell, to your point, I don't know if what you're saying is true, but I have heard stories, and because I by nature am very intentional about reading people and the likelihood of them not being honest with me, and when I'm listening to a story and 0% of the way they're communicating their story reads disingenuous, 0% of that for me, because I live the majority of my life surrounding processing my human interactions with that lens, that is credible data for me, because I have seen it prove accurate and reliable over the course of my entire adult life since I was old enough to interact with humans.
Can I
And
ask you
remember,
a question about that?
yeah.
What if they're just mistaken though? What if they like honestly believe it, but they were just wrong? Like they just didn't know that.
That's a factor as well, right? So I think about this as well. So I look at this as, okay, maybe you're wrong, but you got 0. Okay, cool. You didn't lie at all. Next step, let's process how you factor information. Maybe you believe it, but you're exaggerating based on, what did you do the night before? Maybe you and then I factor in what you're asking me. I think those,
or just like maybe they honestly experienced it, but it was a hallucination in their mind, or I don't know, right? Like there's a lot of things that happen.
We should, if you're open to it, I would love. Are you familiar with NDEs?
Near death experiences. I know more about that than like cymatics. Yeah, I've like watched a lot of interesting things about like how people like are like, I swear to God, I was at the pearly gates of heaven, right?
Yeah.
Like I talked to
Do you give
Jesus,
any credence to that, or do you tend to brush that off?
It's one of those. It all comes back to like what I've been saying. Basically, it's like it's cool, but I'll never know if you're right, like. Because I didn't have the near-death experience, right? You
realize
like,
this
I
is
just
scientific
believe it.
at this point, right? So, did you ever go on Clubhouse?
No.
I lost my mind for about how long? 6 months? 3 months on Clubhouse? I was no longer useful.
You were the Clubhouse. You were him at the Clubhouse.
I was, no exaggeration, 3 o'clock in the morning in the laundry room on Clubhouse, so that I wouldn't wake Yvonne up, and she would still wake up, right? And so it was just like, bro, I was obsessed because I love these types of conversations, and Clubhouse was just full of all of these people having these conversations. I debated scientists. I debated scientists in quantum theory. I debated everybody when it comes to this topic. I did not lose a debate, to be clear, in those things, but I had really interesting conversations. I had good conversations. You know who Brad Lee is?
I do.
I had conversations with Brad Lee about God
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild. So okay.
I'm telling you, like when Clubhouse took off, it was everything. I had a conversation, I am not exaggerating with you, with the husband of the Princess of Norway.
That's sick.
He's a shaman. His name is Shaman Durek. You can look him up. I had spiritual conversations with him because he's like a 7th generation shaman.
Wait on, let's just bring him up real quick for the audience. Here's what Shaman Durek looks like, because that's a wild name, but keep going. He looks like a normal guy. Oh, I've seen him before. I've seen TikToks of him.
Dude, he is a shaman. Like, he is going to talk to you about the spirits standing behind you, bro. And his wife is the daughter of the king and queen of Norway. Right. So at this time they were going through the engagement process, and we were talking about spirituality, and we had discussed maybe having our own room where we talked about his version of spirituality.
His daughter was the daughter of the king of Norway. Did I hear that right?
His fiance. I'm sorry. His fiance.
Okay. Just real quick. Respect. Keep going. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was obsessed with Clubhouse.
This guy, I just want to know, yeah, never mind. Keep going. I'm not going to make that joke. Keep going.
Please make it in the WhatsApp. I want to.
Keep going. Keep going.
So this guy, I lived in these conversations. Anyways, why I bring all this up. I had to legitimately not go in the app because I would have just lost my whole day because
Okay,
it was so intriguing. One of the guys that I met in those conversations, we talked a bunch of times. I was at a bunch of his rooms.
Sure.
He was one of the leading scientists on the planet for near-death experiences. Like
Sure.
scientific, documented, as thorough as you can get. I would think it would be cool to have a conversation about that. Maybe if we could reach out to him. It's been years since I've been on Clubhouse, but
Sure.
maybe if we could reach out to him and have a conversation, I think he would be a cool guest because here's the thing, like near-death experiences, the implication of that is much bigger because you're a science guy. Well, if you got a science using, to the best of his ability, actual scientific processes and confirming that these are not neurological hallucinations, but they are scientifically documented external experiences, I'm assuming that changes if he can prove it.
I mean, that would be really interesting. I'm curious how you would
prove that, quantify that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how would you show that it has nothing to do with neurological stuff?
I think it's with.
Like, I'm just curious. Like, I don't know, but like,
no, I don't remember. It's been like 3-4 years, but I think what he said is that they would take people who were on the verge of passing, and this is over the course, and they would put neurological equipment on their head, and they would realize, okay, is there any neurological activity taking place at the time of passing? And then, okay, zero activity. This person comes back. Okay, here's what happened. And they have all of these experiences and there's no neurological activity. There is no way that their brain is hallucinating this because their brain would have shown us activity. This was not a psychological hallucination. Does that mean we guarantee it's something spiritual? You can't prove that necessarily, but it was definitely not neurological. Well, what the hell is it? I think that's along the lines. I'm not sure.
I get it. I mean, it's just like, I would love to interview him, like, and talk to him about it because, like, in my head, like, this is my first question that comes to my head. It's like, how do we know that they aren't just because they have neurological activity, right? And at some point it stops, right? I'm assuming, because that's like literally brain dead, right? Then they come back. I guess my question is, or my initial question is, how do we know that whatever they experienced didn't happen in those last few moments where there was neurological activity versus during however long they were brain dead? That was my first question, right?
I'll give you a much better one, which I do know because I've seen this in a million different scenarios, right? One of the biggest proofs of this is that people who die, like on the operating table or who in the ER or whatever the case may be, there are, I don't know, tens of thousands of documented cases, Jonah, where these people left their body, looked back at what was happening, and when they come back, tell the nurses exactly what was discussed, what they did, what happened, all of these different things. And these people were flatlined, but they were able to recite conversations. I remember one story I heard where the guy had passed away or something like that, or was in a coma or something like that. He left his body, saw a pen or something get knocked off of a table and roll underneath a cabinet somewhere. Fast forward a couple of days, he's in a hospital. He hears the nurse that was there say, hey, like, I lost this thing. It was my family's or whatever the case may be. And he's like, oh, it's over here. And she was like, how did you know? He's like, because when I died, I saw you guys doing this. I saw this happen. Do you remember when you knocked the table over? Yeah, when that happened, this thing flew over here. And the nurse was like, how the hell? Because there was no way they would have known that. They were literally flatlined, right? And so there's a lot of stories like that too, which I think is interesting. But here's my question. If all of that's true, you don't care about the ramifications of the earth being flat or round or, pretzel shaped, because how does that impact you? Okay, I could hear that. You don't care about NASA because you're not trying to go to space. You ain't worried about all that. But this is a little bit different because hypothetically, let's say that these people's accounts prove a biblical based afterlife. Well, does that change how you approach faith and religion?
Here's the thing, right? It's not, I shouldn't have said, because I did say that earlier. It's like, how is that going to affect my life? Like I said that earlier. That's part of it. A bigger part, which I really want to focus on more, it's the issue with those. I actually find that more interesting anyways, because at some point I'm going to die, right? I do actually find it more interesting. But also the hard part with that is I'll never know if that person's experience is experienced the way that it actually happened. I'm not saying they're lying, right? Like I think most people probably aren't just going to lie about that. I don't think they'd have much to gain, right? I don't think there's a purpose to lying about it. But like, I think about like, and this is like how I evaluate most things. It's like, I think about my life, right? How many mistakes do I make of just like remembering something constantly, right? Like constantly, just like even remembering a normal event, right? That happened a day ago. Like, it's kind of hard for me to remember exactly what I ate for dinner yesterday, right? Because it's not something like a very significant thing. Maybe you'd argue that this is more significant, so you'd remember it correctly. But I know from my personal experience, the human mind is pretty fickle, and it can trick you very easily, right? Like it is very easy. And I could totally imagine that something like when you're about to die, the shit's not working. Your brain's malfunctioning as well as other systems in your body, that like at the very end, you just have crazy experiences. I get what you're saying. Like, it's okay. Oh, how did you have that conversation? The question is, I'll never know if they truly went to heaven or if something malfunctioned in their brain, right? That's why it's like in the end, like it's cool and interesting, but unless it happens to me, because then it's just like, I just don't know if their brain was malfunctioning or if like they were just mistaken about something. Like it's just hard for me to ever know. Like I find it cool, but it won't like convince me of anything. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think Shauna makes a really good point that a lot of these people did feel like you. But when
I'm not saying they didn't.
No,
right?
But here's the point that I think is significant. You, by definition, by nature, by what we just saw in the assessment that Rosie covered for us today, you process things by your capacity of processing logic or intellect. But this isn't an intellectual pursuit. This isn't a logical experience. This is a much more profound experience. This is impacting you in an aspect of your existence that you've probably rarely, if ever, even encountered. This is a core impact for your life. The second you know something down here.
Wait, just real quick, how are they having a near-death experience a core impact of my life?
What I'm saying, when you're in that experience, when you're going through something significant, significantly supernatural, this is a down here impact, not an up here impact. And I would argue that down here always overrides up here, because this is the core essence of who we are, not this, right? That's my belief, right? Because I believe that that's just who we are. I believe that we are not bodies with spirits. I think we're spirits with bodies. And if that's true, then those spirits existed before we entered our body and will exist after we leave our body. This is not who we are. This is who we are. This is who we are living as currently. And to the extent that we access who we are, dictates our experiences and how much we access the depth of what's possible.
Do you mind if I say something? Because like here's like an example in my head that I think would be more interesting to me. Let's just say, right? Okay. Like this would incredibly intrigue me more, right? And I'll tell you why it would intrigue me more. Like if we, let's say, went to, I don't know, Iraq or Afghanistan or just a Muslim country, Saudi Arabia. We talked to someone who had a near-death experience there and they saw Jesus, or like India and they're Hindu, and then they see Jesus Christ and he says like, I'm your Lord and Savior, right? And all of that stuff, right? And there are experiences like that, but those ones are much more fascinating to me than like ones that happen in America with Jesus, right? because, and you get why, you do understand why, right? Because America is much more Christian. It's much more in our media, right? And like the most interesting to me would be like if we somehow had like I don't know, a person's near-death experience in like a tribe that never doesn't even know who Jesus is, and then they start describing the Bible. Those would be things that are like, whoa, that's insane to me, right? Because that logically now doesn't make sense, right? So I don't know if that like it would inform you more. Like, does that make sense? Like why that would make me go crazier? Because it's like, oh, that's not even in your possibility of realms of possibility, right? You can't even imagine that.
What percentage of Muslims who have converted to Christianity, like, how do you think the majority of them do it? Like, what, like, let's give some numbers, hypothetical numbers. Like, how do the majority convert? We had to guess.
I truly have no idea. This is like something I don't know anything about. Like, I would just be throwing stuff out. Like, no idea. Listening to Christians, I have.
So interactions with other people who are Christian, who, you know, they say.
Okay. The answer is I truly don't know. That's not something I've ever researched or known or whatever.
So let me ask you a random question, right? Because I'm just trying to, I'm asking a random question as it relates to what you say.
Sure.
If you had to guess based on a realistically plausible number, what percentage of Muslims converted from Muslims, which, have you ever met a Muslim who is Muslim by faith, by family? Have you ever spent time with those people?
I don't know. Do you mean like insanely religious? I don't know what you mean by that.
Yes,
I know
about Muslim.
I don't know. I know Muslims. I have never talked to them about how religious they pray 5 times a day, right? But I don't know if they're like insanely like I follow the Quran every single. Maybe is the answer.
I'll give you a context. There was this girl that I knew, I don't know, this was shortly after I got in the military, a long time ago. We worked together at a call center doing timeshare resales, right? Started talking. She sat right next to me. We started talking about Jesus because I was fresh into serving Jesus. I carried a Bible with me area. It was big. It was red. So it was a huge topic of conversation. Long story short, this woman, who was probably my same age, in her early 20s, converted from Muslim to Christian. She was put out of her house, disowned by her family, and they didn't speak to her for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So understand, now you're in your 20s, a lot of Muslims, they live in their home until they're married, right? This is a very common thing. You have to realize that the decision for a Muslim to convert to Christianity, for many Muslims, that reality, that's not a willy-nilly like, I guess I'm gonna test this out this week. That is I am going to throw my whole entire life that I know away to follow this thing. So you would agree that it's probably got to be a significant encounter to get them to make that decision. You don't test that out.
I guess it depends. The hard thing is like, I also know American Muslims who are like barely Muslim. You know what I mean? So I guess it just depends.
So knowing that both of these exist, here's my question to you, right? Because I'm just going to go off of which is a great point. Let's throw something random out there. Hypothetically, of all the Muslims on the planet, how realistic, if you had the likelihood of percentage, what's the percentage of Muslims who converted to Christianity because Jesus himself came to them in a dream and said, yo, I'm JC, homie. Let that Muslim stuff go. Come my way.
Muhammad Whack, JC cool. First, what you think? Like, you're asking me how much? How much?
100% of people,
like, how many did that happen to them?
What percentage of them got converted from Muslim to Christianity because of that?
You're asking me about something I truly have no idea about. Like, I don't even have a conception. Like, you're asking, like in my head, honestly, Quijano, I don't even know how anyone converts to Christianity.
How realistic is that? How realistic?
To me, it sounds unrealistic that a huge proportion do it that way. But like, also, I don't know how most people convert to Christianity generally. Like, I don't know. Like, if you ask me about any conversion to Christianity, how does it happen? I don't know most of the time. I don't know if it's a logical thing. I don't know.
I'm not asking you a college test, bro. This isn't like a right or wrong. I'm asking your opinion.
I would say like, did they just have visions of Jesus? How many I think converted that way through visions of Jesus?
Like,
is
Jesus
your question me?
I'm asking you a hypothetical
I don't
situation.
know, 15%? I don't know. I'm getting it.
What I'm asking you is a hypothetical question. You're telling me that it is more intriguing to you that a Muslim person who has zero desire to hear out something like a Jesus has spiritual, supernatural encounters. And so I'm asking you, what's the likelihood of these real, if you don't even know that you believe this is true, where would you place the percentage of likelihood that the Muslims that you gave in your
like 10 to 15%? That's just my gut reaction. I don't know, but 10 to 15%.
So this is a real thing. 25% of Muslims that come to Jesus did so because Jesus himself came to them independently in a dream and told them he was the Messiah and explained it to them using their language and it was a personal encounter. 25% of Muslims converted to Christianity by that.
You mean 25% of Muslims that converted?
That converted, correct.
That converted, right? Okay. You're not saying 25% of Muslims converted.
No.
The
Muslims that converted, that's how
the ones that converted. Okay, sure.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, is that not?
Well, I don't know. But like, okay. I just don't, again, this is something I don't know anything about. I do find it interesting, but then my next question is okay, how many Christians are converted to Islam through that way? Or how many, or did these people like have a lot of interactions with Christians? I don't know these people. Like, I know nothing about this. So like, I would just start asking questions. I do find that more interesting than like a Christian having a near-death experience and being like, oh, I saw Jesus, right? Like, because that fits already into their belief paradigm, right? So that is more intriguing to me, right? I didn't freeze, did I? Please tell me I didn't freeze.
No, you didn't freeze. I'm asking. So there, I am asking.
I just don't know. Like, I know nothing about this. So like, how many? Like, are people having visions of Muhammad? I don't fucking know how that works, right? Like,
so I'm Googling right now, right?
I just truly don't know. Like, are there Hindus is anyone having visions of Shiva? I don't fucking know how this works, right?
Real quick. Are there visions of people?
Is anyone Christians having visions of Shiva? Do Christians ever have visions of Shiva? What a strange question to ask. This is not. Let's chat GPT this, because what it's saying isn't really what I'm asking. How many Christians have had visions of Shiva?
What do you think about this question? Ask this question to ChatGPT. Do the deep research. Right?
Okay, we'll restart.
Yeah, you can stop that. Here, ask this question, right? And we'll do deep research. Of all of the religions in the world, which ones have the highest cases of reported encounters with their deity? What are the numbers of each? And do any come with any possible supporting evidence or, to third party, I don't know, confirmations to support the possibility of this being real? That's what I'm trying to do. Is there any supporting evidence, I guess? Do you think this is do you feel like this is, I feel like this is a good question.
It's not a bad one. I'm with it. Let's see what it says. Are you looking for data on historical religious visions and divine encounters across all religions, or are you interested more in modern documented? I would say modern
personal, yeah.
documented cases. Do you want information on scholarly research or studies that analyze the experiences? Sure, no? What do you think?
Scholarly as well as personal claims.
Scholarly and also personal claims. Okay, we'll see what it says. I'm curious. I just don't know anything about this, you know? I just have no clue. I have heard of, I've heard people on YouTube talk about, I saw Jesus and I used to be a Muslim, right? It's not something I haven't heard before, but it's also, I have also heard stories of people converting to Islam, but I don't know if I've heard it they have a vision of Muhammad. I don't know if that's usually the reason why. I feel it's not they have a vision of Muhammad. It's usually they think something about the religion is better.
That's really interesting to me, right? Because I obviously I have a little bit of a bias simply because of my exposure to Christianity for so much longer. But
Sure.
I have heard of countless Christian-based encounters from various faiths. I can't think of too many that are the opposite. I don't know that I've ever heard of any. I've heard of people converting from Christianity to Islam for personal reasons or for belief system reasons, but I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody converting for spiritual encounter reasons, which is interesting. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I just don't know that I've heard of any.
This isn't something to be honest, I don't know many people who've converted to Christianity over anything, right? That's not my world at all, right? I will promise you, no one converts to Judaism ever, almost ever. You're just born into it. I'm just telling you, there's nobody's having any spiritual visions of Moses. It's just not happening, unfortunately.
Plot twist: it's the same God. Peter, so we use.
I'm just imagining if Quijano wrote the New Testament, it's just first chapter of Quijano 1:1, plot twist, Jesus is God.
Boom. And then hashtag
bars.
Peter, just so you know, bro, we use deep research, which is a new feature that ChatGPT came out with. We're going to give the answer. It does so much deep research.
No, we should show them what it's doing real quick. Hold on. You can see what it's doing. Look at this. Look at this real quick. I can watch ChatGPT. It's reading different things.
Look on the right. Highlight on the right so they can see what's happening.
Yeah, do you see this? Interestingly, the study found that 5 alleged visionaries in Madrid sink their gaze and show no reactions to apparitions. So the Hindus are not responding to EEG results, apparently. So I don't know. It's just interesting. You can see it's thinking. Where the fuck is this? Who even knows? Right?
Yeah. No. I'm gonna see if I can find this for you. Hold on.
Anyways, you can see it thinking. It's crazy how it's thinking. It's getting shit from the Hindu.com right now. Yeah, Quijano, you ever heard of the 1995 Hindu milk miracle?
Obviously. Who hasn't?
Yeah, it's ChatGPT just comes back. It's according to data, Shiva has appeared to more people. How crazy would that be? It's probably not true, but that'd be so nuts. It's 100 out of 100 Hindu Christians converting to Hindus are through spiritual experiences. How crazy if it comes up with something like that. I just don't. This is so not anything I know about. So I'm very open to hearing. Okay, I don't know. Honestly, Quijano, when you say you've heard of 100, I don't know, tons of people who've converted the spiritual experiences to Christianity.
Yeah,
I don't know personally anyone who's wasn't born into Christianity. I don't know anyone who would couldn't made an active conversion to Christianity. I don't know that any personally. I've seen people online, but I don't know anyone who's personally wasn't just born a Christian.
That's really No, I've heard really, really interesting stories. I've been around really interesting stories. I've seen weird stuff. And yeah, it's just really like, dude, there's movies out there, right? There's a movie of a little kid, a little boy. There's actually multiple stories of little kids that died. And I remember one story I heard. There's a couple on Amazon, by the way. This kid was like world renowned because he had like, he went to heaven, he died, went to heaven, and it's like a whole thing, right? But I remember there's one story of I think it was a little boy. He died, went to heaven, spent a bunch of time up there. When he came back, he was talking to his mom, and he was like, "Yeah, I was up there with my sister." And he was like, "What do you mean? You don't have a sister?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do." And he described her, and he said her name. The mom lost her mind because this kid was like 5 years old. The sister that she described and the name that they gave was a baby that she lost due to a miscarriage. He never knew about it. Yeah, but that baby was alive and older than him by the appropriate amount of years in heaven. And he comes back and he tells this story. How the heck is he going to know that? Right?
It's pretty great.
So this guy says no, did he? Jesus Christ. But that's interesting, right? Like for me, that's interesting. That's interesting information. Yo, check this out. You got to watch this. Watch this real quickly while we're waiting for ChatGPT to do its thing. Show it on the screen.
Did you WhatsApp that something?
Yeah, I sent it in WhatsApp.
Okay, hold on. Oh, hold on. You meant to send Gen Z Bible stories? That's what we're supposed to be watching right now?
We're watching Gen Z Bible stories.
Okay.
After Jesus started live streaming and the chat filled up, he began to go off saying, "W to those who aren't thirsty for this midlife.
Hell
they
yeah.
will have eternal life. W to those who take L's from this life, for they will receive an everlasting W. W to those who don't throw hands, for they will secure the eternal bag.
Hell yeah.
W to those who want help passing God's fine check, for he will say bet. W to those who don't cancel orders, for they will not be canceled by the top chief.
Nice.
W to those whose spiritual fit is immaculate, for their hearts will be cuffed by God.
Nice.
W to those who turn ops into bros, for they will be called CEOs of peace.
Hell yeah.
W to those who kept hands for being valid, for they will not be left unread by God.
Nice.
W to you when the ops be capping hard, and to you so very dirty because you're my fan. Trust, you have crushed it, and have the eternal W, for so they did the true bros before you.
That's so funny. That's great. I love that. That'd be so crazy if God talked like that. Like if you get to heaven and that's how God's talking to you, and you're like, "What in the?"
Wait. Did nobody see that video? That was the best. I feel like if I need to convert you to Christianity, I gotta do it with the Gen Z Bible.
Is that? I mean, it's hilarious.
Jess, I can't stand that I've known you for this long, and this is the first time you're telling us this story. Kick all of the rocks.
My dad says I used to talk about my past life as a bus driver in detail.
Have you ever heard stories about that? Those are pretty crazy too.
Sort of, not really. I know more about near-death experiences than like past lives.
All right, what's ChatGPT saying, bro? I need to see what ChatGPT
is saying. It's still waiting. It's still gathering event info. It is right now on. We got past the 1995 Hindu milk miracle. They're talking about now a solar miracle witnessed by 70,000 people considered to be atheists. Okay. We're still waiting, basically.
Okay, guys, do we do a vote in the chat? What religion do you think is going to have the most documented or viable?
Here's the thing, like, question though. Like in my head, it would be Christianity because it's also the biggest religion, no? So wouldn't there be more of them just because it's the biggest religion?
We can ask a follow-up question: is if we do like a per capita,
like a percentages,
comparison, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I just find it interesting. Like it is. I have no idea why. Like Kiana, just for my sake, because you used to be like in ministry. Why do people convert? Like usually, like when you have like somebody come to the church, what are the reasons? Is it usually a spiritual encounter? Is it more like they want a community? Like what do they say to you?
So I can let me. So one, I don't know the actual numbers to this. I'm sure somebody has real numbers. I'm sure there's a percentage of
Your
people.
personal experience. I'm just curious.
Yeah, my personal experience, bro, in a non-denominational church, which is
100%
more.
Jesus apparitions. No, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
100.
Honestly, what it is, I think it's being moved. I think it's unspoken. I think it's this something's happening here, and I don't know what it is. Right? I'll tell you. Like, so when I was going through that experience, dude, I could tell you so many stories. I'll tell you some off of on what you would call it, but I'll tell you this one. I remember right before, so I start going through these things. All of a sudden, I remember when it started. I remember when it, fun fact, I was sitting on the toilet when it started, dropping a dew, right? As I should have been. Midday,
Nice.
mid morning. I'm sitting
Proud of
there and I had this experience in my head. Like it was this weird, almost like a mini vision type thing. It was weird. It was just weird. And I got terrified, right? Look, so it's done. I'll finish the story and then we'll watch it.
It just finished.
So I got
ready whenever you
terrified.
are.
That started all of the weird stuff, right? From that moment, all of the weird stuff started happening. Weird stuff was not happening before that. My life was normal before that, the way as normal as it was at that time. The second that thing happened, that I had that weird little vision thing, boom, everything got weird. So I'll tell you, I went to church a couple times because as I'm going through all this, I'm like, dude, I feel like I need to go to church. Of all the things I could feel, why did I feel like I needed to go to church? But I had this compelling feeling like I needed to go to church. And I remember I went maybe 2 or 3 times. I walked into that church, bro. I was uncontrollably bawling the entire time for no reason whatsoever. None. And that happened repeatedly. I think that there is a lot of people, right? So here's what the Bible says. Whether you believe the Bible or not, that's a different story. But the Bible says that God is going to call his people to him. He will call you. You will know. My sheep hear my voice and they won't follow a different one. I will call you. And I believe that happens in times and seasons, right? People go through seasons in life, just like we have seasons on this earth. When it is your time, you will know. And there will be a series of things that start to happen to let you know. You'll be in the car and randomly the dude next to you listening to some church stuff. You're like, why am I listening to that? You go into the grocery store, somebody talking about Jesus, and you're like, yo, why can't like weird things start happening? This happened to me all the time. I had multiple people come up to me out of the blue. Can I tell you something? Yes. The Lord just told me to come and tell you that he has a purpose for your life and he's about to start calling you. You need to get your life in order because he's about to call you out of your old life into your new one. That happened to me maybe 2-4 times in the midst of this whole season. Never happened before, but that's when so weird stuff like that starts happening. And so there were a lot of people that when I saw, just from my personal experience, it's some version of that. They just know something's calling them and they're just choosing whether or not they're going to listen.
It is like interesting because, like, I'm not gonna lie, like I love the story of Jesus. Like, in terms of like, if what is written in the Bible is 100% true, this is like the perfect human being, right? Like, that is actually a life lived without sin, which is crazy, right? I like it. It is a very attractive story to me in a lot of ways. Like, morally, I think it's there. And it's something that I've always, like, I'm fascinated by the story of Jesus. Like, I love, have you heard of The Chosen? You ever watched that TV show?
We have it on our list to watch. We have not watched it. Have you watched it? Is it good?
Crazy, bro. I've watched every single, it's the best Jesus series ever done, in my opinion. Like, it is, you might not like it because there's certain things that they add into the story that aren't necessarily into the Bible, right? Sure. To make it more of an interesting story, right? Like, you get like a deeper perspective, but like, I find that stuff fascinating, right? Yeah. Like, I find that fascinating because billions of people believe this is true, right? So you can't just throw that out. That's arrogance if you just throw out what billions of people believe without like listening to it. And B, I love the story. I think he is the best example I know of a perfect human being, right? And C, there's historical evidence is very high for Jesus, And D, it's also very fascinating to me how Jewish the whole story is also, which it's just like a weird twist. It's like, because I don't know how to explain it to most people, how it's like, this guy, Jesus is doing everything I did. He's saying the same prayers I say in temple and I grew up saying. They're literally, the Shema is the exact same. It's the same Shema that I say, or I would say every single Shabbat dinner that I would ever go to, right? So it is just like a whole fascinating story from how I grew up, mixed with like the whole story in general.
Yeah,
it's very fast. It's just like that story attracts me too. But anyway, do you guys want to see what ChatGPT came up with?
Let's do it.
Okay, so it's not being very. I kind of want to ask it like, so which one is the most? Because it kind of just gave us. I think it just came up with a bunch of different
clarifying questions, and I would just say, give us. So here's what I would ask. Okay, thank you. Give us this response in numbers. Rank it in order of least to greatest, or greatest to least, or whatever. Order of quantity. And that I would probably just leave it there. What is that? Is that ours? I'll be right back while you're asking.
Okay, now it's got to do more research, because like it just kind of like gave us different examples of. Like also we got to talk about like cross religion, because a lot of these are examples of like within their religion, like a Hindu having a vision of Krishna or whatever, or like a Buddhist having a vision, right? Like it's not really talking about like cross religion right now, which is an issue. But anyway, so yeah, guys, I don't know. Like I find it all very interesting. It's still doing its research. I find it all very interesting in general, guys, because it's like, oh wait, no, it's asking more questions. Let's see. Hold on. So, okay. So Christianity is millions of reported, right? Hundreds of thousands of Marian apparitions and Saint visions reported. The Vatican has recognized 16 Marian apparitions. It suggests that 50% of American Christians have had visions. And then studies indicate that 25% of converts from Islam to Christianity cite dreams of Jesus as a factor. And then Hinduism, thousands. This is like hundreds of thousands to millions. Thousands of reports per year of Hindus encountering gods in dreams, visions, or temple settings. Many Hindu saints report personal blah, blah. There was a Hindu milk miracle, which is a vibe. Islam. Common among devout Muslims. No formal tracking, but a 1930s Middle East survey found many reports of dreams of the Prophet. Many claim direct communion with divine figures like Prophet Muhammad or angels, blah, 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 seen by hundreds of thousands, including many Muslims. Buddhism, many monks report seeing Buddha, blah, 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 during deep meditation. Okay, as recorded trance, witnessed by pilgrims. Some people are having vision as Jews. Crazy. Some rabbis have claims to visions of Elijah, Moses, or divine voices. Okay, whatever. I mean, so right now we only have the Muslim to Christian conversion, which is incredibly interesting. All the rest of them are like
within
the religion. So we might need to ask it like, how about, can you research the amount of cross religion visions, such as Muslims seeing Jesus or Christians seeing the Buddha or Hindus seeing Elijah? We are more interested in these types of visions.
Super interesting. It's so crazy to me how we can get access to like I'll update you shortly. Here's what's funny, guys. When we were first looking into this deep research thing and we were going back and forth, we are talking about a specific topic, and I was telling Jonah, I was like, it's crazy. I spent 10, 15, 20 years researching this information, and ChatGPT's ass just comes out here and puts it all in a document in 8 minutes. It's crazy how quickly they can access this information. Muslim seeing Jesus, most documented cross-religious vision.
Yeah. There's apparently Christian seeing the Buddha or Hindu deities. Hindu seeing Jesus. Okay. Nobody saw Elijah, Muhammad, or Moses from Hindus. Fuck you guys. You know,
Hold on.
interesting.
Muslims-
Okay, so we got a little table here that makes this much easier. You can see my thing, right? Can you read this?
Yeah.
Okay. So Muslims seeing Jesus, they think it's hundreds of thousands. This is the most well documented with studies supporting prevalence. Interesting. Muslims specifically seeing Jesus. Then there are tens of thousands of Hindus seeing Jesus. Then there are hundreds to thousands of Christians seeing the Buddha, which is very interesting.
Hundreds to thousands. So it says rare, but personal testimonies exist, often linked to meditation. So these people went, they meditated, and during the meditation,
let's be like, I mean, come on. This is what Keanu's thinking right now. Is like, look, this is like those fucking liberal blue-haired Christians.
they left
like a vibe in India. Like living. Come on, we all know this was bullshit, right? Like that's what.
I don't want to. That's. I think that context is interesting because I think this is probably a lot of people. Like they're in meditation. This I don't know. This is different because these other ones are just going about their lives, and they're encountering these things. While these people are going to these places, that's an assumption. That's an interesting distinction. Okay, Buddhists.
This is really interesting. So, okay, anyway, so we got that. Buddhists seeing Jesus. It's like hundreds of thousands, so probably around the same as Christians seeing Buddha.
Yeah.
Hindus seeing Elijah, very rare. Okay. No shit. Christians seeing Hindu deities. I'm worried that it only took the ones that I recommended.
Yeah.
I want to know like all of them because I'm a little worried that I think it just compared the ones that I mentioned. Can you do the exact same thing
for all religions?
With all of the religions? Muslims with all the other religious deities, then Christians, then Hindus, then Buddhists, then Jews, etc.
I
think it might have taken the
8 million Buddhists saw Joseph Smith.
So is it the Mormons?
Crazy if true.
Like, what does that tell you? 8 million then? Like are the Mormons right then? Wait a minute. Is Pace right?
Look, their marketing game is top tier, bro. You can't get mad at the Mormons.
Okay, Muslims seeing deities from other religions, because we can just do it while it's coming up with it. So most Muslims have seen Jesus Christ, hundreds of thousands, 25 to 40% of Muslims to Christians convert and see that. Then thousands saw the Virgin Mary. There are none known of the Buddha, none of the Hindu gods. A few Sufi mystics claim encounters with Moses, but Moses is a figure in Islam as well, right? So Buddha, hundreds of thousands of reports so apparently there are hundreds to thousands of reports of Christian monks seeing the Buddha, or I guess mystical experience with the Buddha, but that's only hundreds to thousands. Them seeing Krishna or Shiva or Hindu, pretty rare. Seeing Moses or Elijah. That's so crazy. No known reports. Okay, I won't lie to you. That's pretty fucking wild that it's like 25 to 40% of Muslim to Christian converts saw Jesus. 0.
That's crazy.
0 reported of Christians converting to Islam over visions. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways.
Hindus as well.
Yeah, so Hindus, Jesus Christ, tens of thousands of reports. Virgin Mary, thousands. Buddha, common, but not seen as foreign. That makes sense because Hindus consider the Buddha actually as a Hindu god, so it's not like it doesn't fit. Fuck you. Islamic figures, no known reports. Okay, cool. Jesus Christ, hundreds to thousands. So it seemed like Buddhists about hundreds to thousands. So about as many Buddhists seeing Jesus Christ as Christians seeing Buddha.
Yeah.
Right. Hindu gods very common because they're really intertwined religions. Makes sense. fuck you, no Muhammad ones, whatever. And then hundreds of Jews seeing Jesus Christ is what we know, and very few from Jews seeing anything. Okay, cool. Interesting,
That's
right?
Interesting, man.
This one is the most okay. So I mean, it's very obvious. Out of the people seeing visions, it's mostly Jesus. That's for sure, right? Just objectively, like the next closest is the Buddha from Christians, but that's pretty small.
And that's hundreds.
Like,
we're
talking about hundreds of thousands versus hundreds 2,000. So we're talking about
like
maybe
sub
500 or maybe 1,000 to 2,000.
Sub 2 has more people in it than people who have, according to this,
Right.
Which is crazy, right? Like it's really
very interesting. This is super interesting. How many people are seeing Jesus versus anyone else? This one is kind of wild to me. I think the most interesting one out of all of these is the fact that
they don't see your screen. Jonah, are you not sharing your screen?
Yeah, no, I am. How do you guys not see my screen?
Somebody's saying I wasn't looking. It's a couple people were saying that they weren't seeing your screen.
I mean, you see my screen now.
I don't know. Maybe because I'm in the StreamYard. I don't know. Let me look at my YouTube.
Wait.
Maybe.
Can you people comment if you see my screen right now or not? If you don't, how could you not see my screen? I don't believe you, David Lamb. Are you watching on an Android? Like how
operates in top tier integrity, bro? I don't know.
All you see is the background. How is that even possible?
Yeah, bro, it's not. I'm literally on the YouTube and it's not.
Wait, hold on.
It's not.
How about now?
Hold on. That's crazy. Imagine not sharing your screen properly, bro.
Yeah, that sucks. Is there like something glitching? That's really weird. It should be working.
Okay, it's working now. Now it's working. Go to the.
You guys see it now. Okay, sorry. None of you have been reading any of this. Well, anywho.
At least we read it out loud.
I find the most interesting is that the most seeing visions is Muslims to Christian. And then there are none of Christians seeing Muslims or seeing Muhammad. That's fascinating to me. Super interesting. I don't know. That is very interesting. Like it is interesting in the sense of like what could be causing that? Because the only thing that could be causing that is Jesus is coming to those people, right? Or two, it's somehow like I don't know. They're picking it up from the Christian missionaries because they're talking a lot about Christian missionaries, and I don't know if the Christian missionaries are convincing them.
A lot of these Muslim people, bro, they live in countries where Christianity is not welcome. It's illegal.
I mean, I know, like Islamic law. If you leave Islam, you're killed, right? That death for leaving, the punishment for leaving Islam, if you're like a strict Muslim, is death.
So I'm curious, as a person who's real heavy when it comes to data, like these are not insignificant numbers. I didn't know.
That is pretty fascinating, right? Like I won't lie, it is insanely fascinating, right? This is definitely like one of the more interesting things that would like make it more likely than anything that like Jesus is the right way, right? Like based on this data, it makes me feel like Jesus is most likely the right way out of any of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. And like God works in mysterious ways, sure. But why not show up to all of them?
Why not show up? That's an interesting question, right? That is an interesting
question.
Why
are we only showing up to certain people? Why don't because these are the things I thought about, right? When I think about religion is like, okay, if I'm God and I see Jesus is 100% the right way, I came back as Jesus, right? Why wouldn't I like make it insanely apparent to like all Muslims and all like beyond just the hundreds of thousands? There are billions of Muslims. Why not like show up to everyone?
Yeah,
as, like,
it's funny, right? So David, to answer your question, I think you bring up a good point, but you got to realize that of the numbers of the people who had encounters with Jesus, they're in Muslim countries. There is zero propaganda of Jesus in those countries. Many of those people have probably never seen any version of a picture of his face that are reporting these things. So if we were just referring to American conversions, I think you probably have a decent argument. It's subliminal programming, maybe. But then I'm asking age ranges, because right now you don't see a lot of Jesus around. You just don't. He's not allowed in the conversations as much anymore. So here's the thing, Jonah, that right there, what you just asked opens up a very interesting conversation surrounding predestination, surrounding faith as a whole. There's a scripture in the Bible that says many are called, but few are chosen. And so when you get into this conversation about, purpose and how does this whole planet work, I spent many years in this because this was very important to me, because what you just asked, I think, is a very significant question. And I think that it just leads into a different dialogue. Like, okay, why not all of them, right? Why not this? Why not that? And that's when you really get into the why of spirituality.
The data is super cool, and it is fascinating that no one is having visions of Muhammad or Elijah or Moses or Vishnu or like, it's crazy how it never switches, right? That is like even my logical brain has a hard time coming up with a reason why that would be.
Yeah, it's too statistically significant to be brushed off as happenstance, right?
Hundreds of thousands is so much more magnitude different than hundreds to thousands, you know? Like, we're talking like literally 100x more.
Yeah, here's what's interesting to me. So like this, to circle back and kind of wrap up the conversations. It's a really good conversation. I thought this was really cool show tonight. Give us your thoughts in the chat if you guys were here from the beginning. We had some really cool conversations going through this stuff. Here's what's interesting for me, bro. When we go back to what we were talking about conspiracy things, this for me is why this is interesting, because there is ramifications to what exists, whether we know or not. We live in a world where we think we're only impacted by the things that we're aware of impacting us. But that's just not true. Things impact us every single day that we're completely oblivious to, right? Oxygen impacted people a long time before they even knew that oxygen was a thing and that's what they were breathing. And the same thing, you could argue that potentially one could make the argument that spirituality impacts us every single day in ways that people 3,000 years ago didn't recognize that oxygen was impacting them. This is possible. I'm not going to present an argument or the numbers, but I'm just saying it's possible. And it is for that reason why I think it's so important to avail yourself to the opportunity of seeking this out and understanding it. Because imagine, this is just how I look at it, my perspective, which if you guys weren't here earlier, we did personality breakdowns. We had Rosie come on here. We took the Clifton strength test, and she talked about our personality types, and that converted into our personality types and our strengths, leading to the propensity for us believing or thinking a certain way when it comes to stuff like this. So here's what's interesting, Jonah. Like, when I look at all this stuff, here's my point. Let's say you get to the end, you're 100 years old, and you're laying on your deathbed, and you got all your little, family around you, and they all got the little yarmulkes on or whatever they're wearing at that time. I don't know. Maybe you're Christian.
Go for it. Keep
but
going.
You got your family around, and then imagine you look back and you find out, holy crap, everything I knew about reality was wrong. Oh, how differently I wish I would have lived my life. The possibility of that being true isn't insignificant, in my opinion.
So, okay, let's attach something to that. Because in my head, what are we talking about? Like, if I was 100 and I found out the moon landing was fake, I don't think I would have lived my life any differently.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
That's and so with stuff like that, I don't.
What are we talking about? Are we talking about like Jesus Christ being the Lord and Savior? Well, that is much more significant. That's why I find it more interesting too, right?
Yeah.
Because that's actually something that, like, if Jesus Christ is God incarnate and he came back down to save us from our sin, and that's the only way to get to heaven, right? As it says in the Bible and all that. And if all that's true, then that's very important that I listen to that message if it's true, right? Like, objectively. That's why I find it more interesting to research than the moon landing.
Yeah. Or do you know who Aleister Crowley is?
Alex O'Crowley?
Aleister Crowley.
No idea.
So he was I believe, the founder of the Church of Satan in the United
Okay.
States. Heavily connected and involved with all the big players, political celebrities, all the different things. What's really
Nice.
interesting.
He was at the nitty parties.
Yeah, he was definitely doing some stuff. But he
I
was.
love the moments where like you're deeply thinking, and then I throw in like that, and you're like, it takes you a mind to boot. It takes you like a moment to boot up and be like, did Jonah say something relevant, or is he just throwing random shit out right now?
No. Both are. I mean, they're both one and the same. They're relevant and random shit. I don't think it was. Matter of fact, it was either Aleister Crowley or Anton LaVey. It was one of these two. Which, fun fact,
I don't know any of these people. So.
These were high-level Satanists in the United States, all around a similar time period. Fun fact is, if you look at Zena LaVey, Anton LaVey's daughter, it's crazy. Watch, just Google her one day and tell me.
I just don't know any of these people, but keep going.
Okay. In any case, he was heavy Satanist, and this is documented. Whichever one it was, on their deathbed, they said, "Oh my God," they were dying in and out. Right? They're like, "Oh my God, what have I done? I've made a terrible mistake." So supposedly he saw what happens on the other side, and those were his last words. Right? So I agree with you.
I feel like that's like, okay, it's one thing to be like an atheist. Why would I purposely choose the bad side? You know, I don't get that. What I'm gonna purposefully, like, I believe Jesus Christ is God, and I believe in Satan, and I'm going with Satan. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't even make that's like that. Where's the logic in that?
No,
you know,
Luciferians believe that the whole Bible story is true, but Lucifer wasn't the bad guy; he's the good guy, and
that's
God.
kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, they believe the same story, but God was the bad guy because he was jealous over Lucifer's greatness. And
so wild.
You're the good guy.
But okay. That's so crazy. Okay.
And they really dig into this, right? But so to your point, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just think it's interesting, right? I think it's really, really interesting. And this is why I hear you. I hear you like getting back to the end and saying, you know, oh, that dang moon landing, I got it wrong. I don't think anybody.
It's like, why would I give a shit when I'm on my deathbed? Like, oh shucks, dude. Like, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it's a measure of importance, but
that's like what for me is more important. Like more like interest. Like I'm more naturally intrigued by like religion because like that is something that like at the end of my life, if I'm wrong about, could very well impact everything, right?
Yeah.
While like it's like so like I don't know. That's just my personal belief. It's why like it's one of the reasons why I'm less interested in most conspiracies in general, right? I mean honestly also part of it is I just don't like I don't very naturally believe most conspiracies. Like I need like a lot of evidence to be convinced into a conspiracy theory. There are some conspiracies that like I do find more compelling than others, for sure, right? But in the end, I don't want like it. I don't want to spend fucking 20 hours researching the moon landing. That seems like it's just like, dude, that's just like not that interesting to me, to be honest, right? Like it's just like, dude, like I just don't care enough, to be honest. Like it's just like not something that's gonna affect my life in the end. Even if I did all the research, I feel like I just wouldn't really know in the end. So
here's a crazy plot twist, bro. If the earth is flat and we live in a dome and the frequencies that we could tap into and impact the world with, if we learned how to use the vibrations from that dome, that actually could change your life. Maybe
that one is different. Now we're getting into, and then now this gets back into like what I already have done. I already know from science, and that gets into a whole different thing, right? That's where it's more like, okay, no, this is different, right?
You can share it with Vina, who is the flat earther, because maybe you need to educate her on how science works.
I do. I think I do need to educate her how science works. I don't know. Maybe. Cool.
No, Jess. Long story short,
Judaism, God punish you for being Christian?
No, it's the same.
No,
guy.
but you are committing blasphemy.
No, you're not.
If-
It's the same guy.
Sometimes I'm there hearing, like, I'm like, you know what? Pharisees got a few points. It's pretty clear. You're not supposed to fucking work on the Sabbath, guys.
Take the day
Don't
off.
know. I'm
And
just
then you
saying, like, it's like if the law is true, this guy's fucking up. like, I'm obviously kidding, but it's just like it's just kind of just sometimes I'm like, you know what? Like, it's not like these guys did. It's like it does say that, you know.
It
Like, I
does
get
say-
the point. I get Jesus's point that it's not as important as like loving your neighbor and all that shit. But like, you know, you're claiming you're claiming to be God. It's pretty blasphemous on the surface. If you resurrected, that's a whole different case. But anyway, I'm fucking around. But
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
if you guys, we'll leave you guys with the Gen Z Bible quote, right? Blessed are those who take W's and L's, or whatever he said. Right?
dude, you know, blessed are those who take L's because you will have the eternal W.
Because you'll have the blessed are those who take L's, because you will receive the eternal W. In the words of the Gen Z Bible, if you guys haven't listened to the Gen Z Bible, do it, because this is how you're going to win the kids to Jesus.
He did claim. According to Christians, he claimed to be God. Shauna, what do you mean? Christians think he claimed to be God.
He definitely did. He definitely
Yeah.
did. Multiple times. But what final thoughts, Jonah? I think this was a good episode. What do you think?
Fun. I think it was cool. I think it was cool getting into our personalities. I feel like after having a lot of these conversations with you, the more I talked with you and the more I know, I've learned more about you too, as we've had these conversations. And the more I understand how you think about the world, your beliefs become more apparent. Like, they make way more sense to me than they did before, right? Like, when we first had these conversations, I didn't think you were an idiot, but I thought I literally just thought your discernment was whack. Like, I was just like, oh, your discernment fucking sucks, right? Like, that's why you believe blah, 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 blah. So you're having trouble seeing reality, right? Like, it just was my natural response. But now it's like, okay, no, it's coming from different beliefs you have. And your beliefs, it's like, okay, I don't agree with your beliefs, but also it makes way more sense how you logically got to your conclusions from that. Like, this was a whole nother conversation we didn't even have on the podcast, like with the WhatsApp, when we were arguing about sources versus deductive reasoning, right? And which is more important, right? Like, I don't know if I'd lean on sources more, but I lean on evidence way more than my deductive reasoning. But if you lean, and like both of us agreed that both are important, but like, I would much more lean on what I call evidence or whatever, right? You can argue about what evidence is than my deductive reasoning. And you told me that you would be like, if I had to choose between the two, deductive reasoning would be more. And then it's like, oh, that makes way more sense to me, potentially why Quijano believes in more conspiracies too, right? Because these are things that don't have as much published evidence or sources for them, but deductively they make sense, right? So that makes more sense why I would be like, I need some evidence, and you're like, but it logically makes sense, you know? And and that's one example. Is like, the more that I talk to you, it makes more sense in my mind how you think and why the way you think leads towards your conclusions, which makes, I think, it like a much better conversation overall, because it just informs my thinking so much, where it's like, okay, that makes more sense now than before. Because before, I just thought, what I thought you were doing before is, let's just say with the conspiracies, right? Let's just say is that, how do I describe it? Like, what I thought you were doing was you were just like looking at a conspiracy and being like, bro, this is 100% true, right? Like, look at the evidence, right? And now I'm realizing most of the time what you're saying is like, how cool could this be to be true? even though I think this is more likely, we're in like a probability metric, right? So anywho, so like the more I learn about you, the more I understand also what you're saying politically. So I think we just got more into this conversation, and it just leads to a better conversation overall. So yeah, that's why I really like this combo, and like ones we've been having recently where I'm like, oh, that's how he's getting there, right? It's not that he just watched a documentary and was like, this is it, right? Which is like what it felt like you were doing with that documentary. Be like, bro, logically, this is it. Aliens. And I'm just like, dude, what? Okay, Keanu. Like, that's what it felt like was happening. And now I understand more like, no. A, it's because like deductively it makes sense. And B, he's not saying it's necessarily 100% true. He just like likes looking at this information and being like, what if it was true? Let's not scoff at it. So anyhow, yeah.
No,
So,
I appreciate that, man. And guys, for context, like this is why we do this podcast. Jess, yes, we did the personality test earlier today.
yeah, you missed it. You'll have to rewatch it.
Yeah, it was really, really cool watching her break down the strengths. And yeah, this is what this is about, guys. This is why we do this podcast. This is why we talk about the stuff that we talk about, because the world is full of cool stuff. And a lot of the cool things that we never experience were usually on the other side of a conversation that we weren't open-minded enough to have. Imagine living in such a small life that you don't experience so many things that you could because your brain was just too closed to listen to something foreign to you, right? And I think that when you do that, you get wiser, you grow, and you become a bigger person for it. And I think like it's a net positive.
Yeah, 100%. No, I agree.
Shauna, check out Wes Huff. Wes Huff, Shauna. Wes Huff. Check him out. Your numbers on 300 Years Later are not all accurate. Check out Wes Huff. He will be a great resource to cover the numbers on who actually followed Jesus around. Anything else, Jonah?
No, I'm good. I'm ready to wrap it up. I think we did a good podcast. I appreciate all of you guys. We'll go next week. We're doing dating. We're doing a dating arc, guys. We're going to try out dating. We're going to be creating a profile live. We're going in. We're going to create my Hinge profile up.
We're going to try to get Jonah laid. Lane.
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 What?
I don't know.
Lane. What are you talking about? Lane. We will find a maiden that will have Lane with him. Like what?
We're looking for Jonah.
Next week is creating the profile. We're hopefully getting me laid. Ideally, finding the love of my life, but I'll take just casual sex as well. Whatever we can get.
The one, and then we'll bring her back, and we'll have her. We'll have your the one. They will have them do a. We'll have them.
I fucking hate you. It's gonna be a they them. All right.
You can also bring the really, really bad dates in, the ones that ghosted you, like the last one. We could.
How would you get in contact with them? Do I give you their number and then you're like, hey, I'm Jonah's friend.
Like, hey,
are you down?
We want to do a strength test, and we want to see if there was something about your guys' personalities that caused this to not work out.
I feel like it's just gonna be such a. I feel like if that actually happens, where you just like these women to just be like saying the wackest things ever, just being like,
it wasn't his personality, it was his penis. That's why I didn't call him back.
That'd be so crazy if a girl said that live on air. I'd be like, wow.
That would be the best. So we got.
What would I even do? What could I possibly do at that point? Like, what do I do? Call other girls up and be like, no, Rebecca, remember me from 10 years ago? Tell her my penis is huge. Like, what would I even do?
You're getting into peer-reviewed data, double-blinded studies.
No, I'd just be a double-blinded study.
It'll be good. We got to bring the W's and the L's, right? And we got to hear their perspectives. Bro, I think it would be legit fire market research to bring a girl who just hated their date with you and get her to come up here and just tell why. That would be the fieriest thing on the planet. We got to figure out.
I think of like the last girl who probably hated the date. I'm trying to think. I can like the thing is like I can also tell you why the girl isn't down. Usually, like there's one story coming to my head, and we need to end it.
Your top strengths.
Yeah, like there was one where my friends sabotaged me. It was so fucking annoying. They fucked up my game. It was really annoying. It's a story for another time.
Okay, you got to leave with it.
I'll tell the quick version. The quick version is basically like I was trying to get at a girl who was like not in the friend group, but on the edges of the friend group. And then just the friend group just starts making this a thing way too early. Like, I'm not even saying anything, and they're just start talking about this way too much. It just gets back to her. And so she's just turned off, and I'm like, dude, you guys fucked me on this. Could you let me cook? Like, could you not?
Can I cook?
Could you not go crazy over the fact I went on a date with this girl? Like, chill. Like, let me do my thing.
You need to come up with a plan for your dating, right? Like the Jubal or whatever. Like, we gotta come up for outreach. There's a follow-up game. We need to appoint a follow-up manager. I will happily take on a task, and I will just call them and just be like, hey, I'm following up. This is DQ from the Profit and Paradox podcast. I'm calling because I know you recently went on a date with so-and-so, right? I wanted to talk to you about your experience. Would you be willing to share your experience?
That'd be so funny.
Call them live.
And but you'd have to probably tell them that I'm not listening in.
Maybe we could. The radio show,
I think you have to hide, because I feel like they lie or hide stuff if they think I'm listening in. You know?
Yeah,
I don't know. That'd be hard
to do that. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a whole follow-up game because it's W's.
That would be hilarious. That'd be so interesting from my perspective too. I'd be actually really interested to hear. It'd be real. I'm curious. I'm curious because I feel like I hear from my girlfriends how they disqualify some guys is sounds like the smallest thing ever every once in a while. Where it's just I just didn't like his hair. It's I
hate the way he ate noodles. I couldn't deal with the way he ate noodles.
It just gave me the ick, you know? I feel like it'd be crazy if it's like that. It's just all right.
Yeah, we're gonna have to break down what the ick is. Yeah, this is gonna be fun, guys. We're really gonna dig into this thing. We're gonna try to hack dating in 2025, and Jonah's gonna be one of our primary muses to do this, and it will be amusing.
Initially, it's just gonna be me. We're it sounds like for at least a couple weeks, we're just doing me, and then we gotta figure out how to do it. You know,
we'll do it. But here's the thing: if we win with you, bro, there's lots of single people out there. We can,
if we win with me, there's hope. We can turn this into a business.
Look,
we can just have people pay.
There are no cards.
We're not bluffing. This is what we're doing next week. We're doing a real different turn. This is the last Jesus conversation for a while. We're trying to get lit.
Hey, we may have to just do a date during the podcast, and I'm just going to interview. I'm going to ask the hard questions. I'm going to ask them how they feel about the moon landing.
Anyone in the audience, if you know a single girl, ages 24 to 32.
Okay, I'm glad you came to the
You're expecting me to say ages 16 to 55. Just way too big of a range. I'd say 24 to 32. If you guys know how many single friends who want to go on a virtual date, that would be sick. So if anybody's watching this right now out of the 19 people and you hey, this would be hilarious. Wait, just show them a profile of mine, show them a picture, and we do a date. Oh, Jess, I appreciate you. Jess, do you have any hot friends in Tampa? Help a brother out, you know?
Do you have any Tampa sixes, Jess?
Yeah, yes. I've got I'll take Tampa 5s to 10s, you know?
What if you get a really kind-hearted Tampa 3.8? I mean, are you open-minded?
Am I open-minded? Was that a joke?
So much, bro. That was
I don't know what your Tampa 3.8 is. What is that? A Nebraska 5? Probably not.
Not it's a Nebraska 6. I feel like she could push a Nebraska 6.
I think we'd have to explore what our scale are.
Civic with really nice rims.
I hate those fucking cars, dude. I hate the cars. That's a fucking Toyota Prius, but then they put some bullshit on it. It was bro, It's a Toyota Prius. Calm the fuck down, okay?
I mean, look, bro, you're a Nebraska 9, so you're pushing big
Thank
numbers.
you. I'm
You're
pushing big. Nebraska 9 vibes, you know?
Yeah, so we got to make sure that you're hitting equivalents. This is gonna be fun, bro. We're like hacking
It's
this.
gonna be
Is
a good time.
It's gonna be good, guys. Any feedback y'all have, any advice? If you got a cousin or an auntie who feels youthfully exuberant, maybe we can hook you up with my aunt. I feel like she may. You got
Your aunt, dude? Someone
Yeah.
who's older than you?
she's in her 60s, but I'm saying, bro.
What are you doing? We're not hooking me up with a 60-year-old. Bruh.
I'm just saying, bro. Keep
So
your eye
crazy. Here's what we're looking for, guys. We're looking for Tampa 5 to Tampa 10. We're looking for age range 24 to 32, right? Wanting to date a young, successful real estate entrepreneur who's a Nebraska 9, you know?
Heavy emphasis on the Nebraska 9, guys.
Yeah. I
Heavy
did get
emphasis
captured,
on that.
Crystal. Yes, that was in the first podcast I told that story. All right, we're at 4 hours. Let's wrap it up. I love this shit. We gotta wrap it up. We love you guys. Profit
Come
and
back
Paradox,
up.
episode 40. Next week is gonna be fun. It's gonna be dating.
I'm back.
See you later. Peace.